Alrighty, we're back. Sorry about the delay. Welcome back to another thrilling, I hope, installment of Wordy Wednesdays. I'm your intrepid narrator, Fraggeth, and today we're going to be reading more of Downbelow Station by the woman, the myth, the legend, CJ Cherryh. And yes, good morgen to you as well, optical antenna. Oh, sorry. That's right. Clack my teeth aggressively on a mug. That's real smart. Sorry to everyone who had to hear that. Okay. So previously on, we're just kind of thrown into it. But the basic setup so far is in the distant future. Not so distant, a couple hundred years from now, give or take. 300, 325-ish years from now. Humanity has spread to the stars, and basically, over time, the powers that be on Earth that nominally had a hold over every new established venture and hold fast and station in space no longer hold. My mic sounds a bit weird, kind of tinny. Okay, that's bad. One sec, let me unplug and replug. Thank you for the heads up. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Any better? There's other things I can do as well if need be. Anyway, Earth basically no longer has control of the colonies that have spread out throughout space as much as they would like to. And a big part of the reason they don't have control is due to same problem. Okay. That's not good. Let us try again. We will try this until it works. Plan B. Come on. Trying to bring up. Well, I'd like my. I am. It could be that my headset is dying, which would be inconvenient. I am looking into getting another microphone, a proper microphone. But I'll have to put it through its paces if and when I wind up doing that, as well as find a place to keep the thing. Anyway, where was I? Right. So humanity is spread throughout the stars. You've got Earth is no longer essential to getting commodities and luxuries. So at this point, space is kind of its own thing, particularly due to Union, which is basically a rival political power now in space that Earth really doesn't understand. Um, or hasn't really grokked. And when I say Earth, I don't mean like the political bodies on Earth per se, like the countries. I mean uh, the Earth Company, which is this multinational corporation that has fingers in its pies and is basically the reason we have developed space stuff. And then around comes jump drives, which allow us to go faster than the speed of light, and it all expands well beyond Earth Company's ability to keep a hold of. So that's the history lesson. And so what Earth has done is made a fleet in order to police and basically keep everyone under the thumb of Earth Company. And unfortunately, this fleet is not particularly well equipped. They do not get resupplied adequately, and they're pretty much out there all the time doing their thing. And right now, Union is doing a big push. They have attacked a number of stations. So a portion of the fleet under one Signy Mallory, who we will be, who's one of our main characters of this novel, um, is basically has taken a massive, massive wave of refugees from a number of stations that have been attacked to Pell system, which is, geez, I used to know. We call it Pell, but I think it's Tau Ceti. Yes, it's Tau Ceti. Um, so a whole lot of refugees have come to the space station at Tau Ceti, um, or Pell, as we will be calling it forever further. Um, Alternatively, Downbelow station. Now, the reason it's called Downbelow is because there's at Tau Ceti, there is apparently a planet that has actual life on it. It's not quite as intelligent as we are, but they are fairly intelligent, and they're relatively chill and help us out. Um, we give them some stuff, they give us some stuff. It's okay. They look kind of like chimpanzees, is sort of how they're described. So, sort of simian, furry-faced. Their oxygen mixture is different, but there's a bunch of them on Downbelow station. We will learn more about that later. That is not a immediate thing we're going to be dealing with, but it is part of it. So there's a lot going on. Uh, CJ Cherryh is going to be drip feeding us details and information about how the world works, particularly in these smaller scale worlds. How, what is the power structure of what is the power structure on this Downbelow station, or on Pell Station? What is the power structure of the Mazian fleet? Uh, you know, what are the dynamics of these merchanter ships that have basically been traveling the stars with one family running them for, years, decades now? Um, what sort of dynamics pop up here? And we've already been fed some of that. For instance, generally a family name is attached to some merchanter ship. Um, One of these are the Quens, a member of that family, of which is married to a member of the power structure, one of the founding families, the Constantins of Pell Station. We're going to learn a lot more about this, and I'm not going to be able to go over it constantly because, like, this has already been like 10 minutes of me yapping incoherently about about some of the setup. But suffice it to say, there's a lot of it, and there's a bunch of blink and you'll miss it, particularly in this volume. Stuff that will make sense. It's like, oh, okay, just very matter of factly tell us how things are. So right now, Pell Station has to deal with this massive influx of refugees from other systems, and they are nobody would be adequately prepared for this. But they are not quite adequately prepared for this, and they're making do as best they can. And we're going to see what that's like. And I now have to remember. Oh, right, this thing. Okay. Um, yeah, and we're going to have intrigue. Things are going to be interesting. I promise. It's gonna. Some of this book is going to seem like it's just kind of dragging and going nowhere, and then you realize she's been telling you things about how things are actually going places the entire time. Um, Mostly it's just a mountain of inexorable details that all start coming together. It's pretty brilliant. It's very brilliant, in my opinion. So without yammering more about it, let's get to it, because I only have so much time and energy to yammer. So we're going to do that. Um, yeah, I did really set aside quite a few pages. Okay, well, we'll try to chip away. Let me real quick tune into my stream to see if it is being tinny for me, which is what I should have done in the first place. That would have been good. Let's see what it do. Nope. Oh, I see what you mean. I don't know what's doing that. Do I have Discord open for some reason? I shouldn't. No, I don't know what that's all about. I will look into fixing that. I see what you mean. Um, it's like it's picking up a lot more noise than it usually does. Anyway, we'll get rolling with this next chunk of Downbelow Station. Sorry about the technical issues. Chapter 5, Pell, May 5th, 2352. Angelo Constantin looked up sharply from the desk covered with notes and emergencies which wanted immediate attention. Union? He asked in dismay. A prisoner of war, the security head told him, standing uncomfortably before the desk. Part of the Russell's evacuation, turned over to our security separate of the others. A pickup from a capsule, minor ship, arms comper, confined at Russell's. Norway carried him in, no turning him loose among the refugees. They'd kill him. Mallory added a note to his file. He's your problem now. Her words, sir. Angelo opened the file, stared at a young face, a record of several pages of interrogation, union ID, and a scrap of notepaper with Mallory's signature and a scrawl. Young and scared. Joshua Halbright Tally, arms comper. Union Fleet minor probe. He had 500 individuals and groups who had thought they were headed back to their original housing. Warnings of further evacuations in the secret instructions Mallory had left, which was going to take at least most of Orange and Yellow sections, dislocating more offices, and 6 company agents who thought they were headed beyond to inspect the war, with no merchanter who would agree to take company scrip to take them aboard. He did not need problems from lower levels. The boy's face haunted him. He turned back to that page, leafed again through the interrogation report, scanned it, remembered the security chief still standing there. So what are you doing with him? Holding him in detention. None of the other officers agrees what to do with him. Pell had never had a prisoner of war. The war had never come here. Angelo thought it over and fretted the more for the situation. Legal Affairs have a suggestion? Suggested I get a decision here. We're not equipped for that kind of detention. No, sir, the security chief agreed. It was a hospital facility down there. The setup was for retraining. Adjustment, what rare times it had ever been needed. We can't treat him. Those cells aren't set up for long stays, sir. Maybe we could rig up something more comfortable. We've got people without lodgings as it is. How are we going to explain that? We could get set up something in detention itself, take a panel out, at least get a bigger room. Postpone that. Angelo ran a hand through his sparse hair. I'll consider policy on the case as soon as I get the emergency matters settled. Deal with them as best you can with what you have at hand. Ask the lower offices to apply some imagination to the case and send me some recommendations. Yes, sir. The security chief left. Angelo put the folder away for later use. A prisoner of that kind was not what they needed at the moment. What they did need was a means to secure housing and feed extra mouths and to cope with what was coming. They had trade goods which were suddenly going nowhere. Those could be consumed on Pell and on Downbelow at the base and out in the mines. But they needed others. They had economics to worry about, markets which had collapsed, and the value of any currency in doubt as far as merchanters were concerned. I'm going to try that again because my tongue tripped all over it. They had economics to worry about, markets which had collapsed, the value of any currency in doubt the value of any currency in doubt as far as the value of any currency in doubt as far as merchanters were concerned. From a star-spanning economy, Pell had to be turned to feed itself, to self-sufficiency, and perhaps to face other changes. It was not the single Union prisoner they had in hand, identified, who had him worried. It was the likely number of Unionists and sympathizers who would grow in quarantine, folk for whom any change was going to look better than what they had. There were only some of the refugees with papers, and many of those had been discovered not to match the prints and photos attached to them. We need some sort of liaison with the quarantine zone residents, he advised council at that afternoon's meeting. We'll have to set up a government on the other side of the line, someone of their choosing, some manner of elections, and we'll have to deal with what results. They accepted that, as they had accepted all else. It was the concerns of their own constituencies which had them distraught, the councillors from dislodged Orange and Yellow, from Green and White, which had gotten most of the influx of station residents. Red sector, untouched, abutting Yellow from the other side, was anxious. Others were jealous. There was a deluge of complaints and protests and rumors of rumor. He made note of them. There was debate. It finally came to the necessary conclusion that they had to relieve pressure on the station itself. We do not authorize further construction here, the man Ayres interposed, rising from his seat. Angelo simply stared at him, given heart to do so by Signy Mallory. Oh, I forgot, that's one of the company men. We do not authorize further construction here, the man Ayres interposed, rising from his seat. Angelo simply stared at him, given heart to do so by Signy Mallory, who had called a bluff on the company and made it good. I do, Angelo said. I have the resources to do it, and I will. I do. There we go. I do so authorize, Angelo said. I have the resources to do it, and I will. There was a vote. It went the only sane way, with the company observers sitting in silent anger, vetoing what was passed, which veto was simply ignored while plans proceeded. The company men left the meeting early. Security reported them later agitating on the docks, trying to engage a freighter at inflated rates with gold. There was not a freighter moving for anything except in-system hauling, ordinary runs to the mines. It did not surprise Angelo when he heard that. There was a cold wind blowing, and Pell felt it. Everyone with instincts bred of the beyond felt it. Eventually, perhaps, the company men did, at least two of them, for those two engaged a ship home to Saul, the same which had brought them, a smallish and decrepit jump freighter, the only merchanter with an EC designation which had docked at Pell in the better part of a decade, laden with down-below curios and delicacies for its return, as it had brought in goods from Earth, which sold high for their curiosity. The four other company representatives upped their offers and boarded a freighter for an unguaranteed run on the freighter's own schedule, to call at Viking and wherever else the uncertain times left safe. They accepted Mallory's conditions from a merchanter captain and paid for the privilege. Chapter 6. 1. Downbelow Main Bases. May 20th, 2352. It was storm on Downbelow when the shuttle came down, and that was not uncommon on a world of abundant cloud, when all the winter on the northern continent was wrapped in sea-spawned overcast, seldom cold enough to freeze, not warm enough for human comfort, never a clear sight of sun or stars for month on dreary month. The unloading of the passengers at the landing site was proceeding in a cold, pelting rain, a line of tired and angry people trudging over the hill from the shuttle, to be settled into various warehouse digs amid stacks of mats and musty sacks of prosh and fickley. "Move it over and stack it up," the supervisors shouted when the crowding became evident, and the noise was considerable. Cursing voices, the beating of rain in the inflated domes, the inevitable thump of compressors. The tired stationers sulked and finally began to do as they were told. Young, most of them, construction workers and a few techs, virtually without baggage, and no few of them frightened at their first experience of weather. They were station-born, wheezing at a kilo or so extra weight from Downbelow's gravity. Wincing at thunder and at lightning which chained across the roiling skies. No sleep for them until they could set up some manner of dormitory space. No rest for anyone, native or human, who labored to carry foodstuffs over the hill to lade the shuttle, or the crews trying to cope with the inevitable flooding in the domes. John Lucas oversaw some of it, scowling, walked back to the main dome where the operations center was. He paced, listened to the rain, waited the better part of an hour, finally suited up again and masked to walk to the shuttle. "Goodbye, sir," the comm operator offered, rising from his desk. Others stopped work, the few who were there. He shook hands, still frowning, and finally walked out the flimsy lock and up the wooden steps to the path, spattered again by the cold rain. His 50-ish overweight was unflattered by the bright yellow plastic. He had always been conscious of the indignity and hated it, hated walking in mud up to the ankles and feeling a chill which penetrated even the suit and the liner. Rain gear and the necessary breathers turned all the humans at the base into yellow monsters, blurred in the downpour. Downers scurried about naked and enjoying it, the brown fur of their spindly limbs and lithe bodies dark with moisture and plastered to them, their faces, round-eyed and with mouths set in permanent O's of surprise, watched and chattered together in their own language, a babble in the rain and the constant bass of thunder. He walked the direct trail to the landing site, not that which led to the other leg of the triangle, past the storage domes and barracks domes. This one had no traffic, no meetings, no goodbyes. He looked across to fields which were aswim. The gray-green brush and the ribbon trees on the hills about the base showed through curtains of rain, and the river was a broad, overflowed sheet on the far side bank, where a marsh tended to form, for all their attempts to drain it. Disease among the native workers again, if any downers had slipped in unvaccinated. It was no paradise, Downbelow base. He had no reluctance to leave it, and the new staff and the downers to each other. It was the manner of the recall which rankled. "Sir!" At last, parting nuisance came splashing after him on the trail. Bennett Jacent. John half turned, kept walking, made the man work to overtake him in the mud and the downpour. "The mill dike," Jacent gasped through the stops and hisses of the breather. "Need some human crews over there with heavy equipment and sandbags." "Not my problem now," John said. "Get to it yourself. What good are you for? Put those coddled downers to it. Take an extra crew of them. Or wait on the new supervisors, why don't you? You can explain it all to my nephew." "Where are they?" Jacent asked. A skilled obstructionist, Bennett Jacent, always on the line with objections when it came to any measures for improvement.
More than once, Jason had gone over his head to file a protest. One construction project he had outright gotten stopped, so that the road to the wells stayed a mired track. John smiled and pointed across the grounds, far across, back toward the warehouse domes.
There's not time. That's your problem.
Bennett Jacent cursed him to his face and started to run it, then changed his mind and raced back again toward the mill. John laughed. Soaked stock in the mill. Good. Let the Constantines solve it. He came over the hill, started down to the shuttle which loomed alien and silver in the trampled meadow, its cargo hatch lowered, downers toiling to and fro, and a few yellow-suited humans among them. His trail joined that on which the downers moved, churned mud. He walked on the grassy margin, cursed when a downer with a load swayed too near him, and had the satisfaction at least that they cleared his path. He walked into the landing circle, nodded curtly to a human supervisor, and climbed the cargo ramp into the shadowed steel interior. He stripped the wet rain suit there in the cold, keeping the mask on. He ordered a downer gang boss to clean up the muddied area, and walked on through the hold to the lift, rode it topside into a steel, clean corridor and a small passenger compartment with padded seats. Downers were in it, two laborers making the shift to station. They looked uncertain when they saw him, touched each other. He sealed the passenger area and made the air shift so that he could discard his breather and they had to put theirs on. He sat down opposite them, stared through them in the windowless compartment. The air stank of wet downer, a smell he had lived with for 3 years, a smell with which all Pell lived, if one had a sensitive nose, but Downbelow base worst of all, with dusty grain and distilleries and packing plants and walls and mud and muck and the smoke from the mills, latrines that flooded out, sump pools that grew scum, forest molds that could ruin a breather and kill a man who was caught without a spare. All of this and managing half-witted downer labor with their religious taboos and constant excuses. He was proud of his record, increased output, efficiency where there had been hands-folded complacency that downers were downers and could not comprehend schedules. They could, and did, and set records in production. No thanks of it. Crisis hit the station, and the Downbelow expansion, which had limped along in and out of planning sessions for a decade, was suddenly moving. Plants would get the additional facilities he had made possible, manned by workers whose supply and housing he had made possible, using Lucas Company funds and Lucas Company equipment. Only a pair of Constantins was sent down to supervise during that stage, without a thank you, Mr. Lucas, or a well done, John, thanks for leaving your own company offices and your own affairs, thanks for doing the job for 3 years. Of course. Emilio Constantin and Milico D. appointed Downbelow supervisors. Please arrange affairs and shuttle up at the earliest. His nephew, Emilio. Young Emilio was going to run things during construction. Constantins were always in at the last stage, always there when the credit was about to be handed out. They had democracy in the council, but it was dynasty in the station offices. Always Constantins. Lucas's had arrived at Pell as early, sunk as much into its building, an important company back in the Hinder stars, but Constantin's had maneuvered and gathered power at every opportunity. Now again, his equipment, his preparation, and Constantin's in charge when it reached a stage when the public might notice. Emilio, his sister Alicia's son, and Angelo's. People could be manipulated if the Constantin name was all they were ever allowed to hear, and Angelo was past master at that tactic. It would have been courtesy to have met his nephew and his wife when they came in. Sorry, I just happened to be looking to see if my audio levels were working, and I saw your comment. I'm sorry, Frank Weiser. And I was like, wait, who's he talking to? Oh, yes. I'm sorry, Mr. President. Can I call you back? I'm reading a book. Uh, anyway. It would have been courtesy to have met his nephew and his wife when they came in, to have stayed a few days to trade information, or at the least to have informed them of his immediate departure on the shuttle which had brought them down. It would also have been courtesy on their part to have come at once to the domes for an official greeting, some acknowledgment of his authority at the base. But they had not. Not even a calm sent hello, uncle, when they landed. He was in no mood for empty courtesies now, to stand in the rain shaking hands and mouthing amenities when a nephew with whom he seldom. Sorry, I'm going to reread that. Not even a calm sent, "Hello, uncle," when they landed. He was in no mood for empty courtesies now, to stand in the rain shaking hands and mouthing amenities with a nephew with whom he seldom spoke. He had opposed his sister's marriage, argued with her. It had not linked him in to the Constantine family. With her attitude, it was rather a desertion. He and Alicia had not spoken since, save officially. Not even that in the last several years. Her presence depressed him. And the boys looked like Angelo, as Angelo had been in his younger days. He avoided them, who probably hoped to get their hands on Lucas Company, at least a share of it, after him as nearest kin. It was that hope, he was still persuaded, which had attracted Angelo to Alicia. Lucas Company was still the biggest independent on Pell. But he had maneuvered out of the trap, surprised them with an air, not one to his taste, but a live body all the same. He had worked these years on Downbelow, reckoning at first it might be possible to expand Lucas Company down here through construction. Angelo had seen it coming, had maneuvered the council to block that. Ecological concerns. Now came the final move. He accepted the letter of instruction to return, took it just as rudely as it was delivered, left without baggage or fanfare, like some offender ordered home in disgrace. Childish it might be, but it might also make a point with the council. And if all the stock in the mill was soaked on the first day of the Constantine administration here, so much the better. Let them feel shortages on station. Let Angelo explain that to council. It would open a debate in which he would be present in council to participate, and, he wanted that. He had deserved something more than this. Engines finally activated, heralding lift. He got up, searched up a bottle and a glass from the locker. He received a query from the shuttle crew, declared he needed nothing. He settled in, belted, and the shuttle began lift. He poured himself a stiff drink, nerving himself for flight, which he had always hated, drank, with the amber liquid quivering in the glass under the strain of his arm and the vibration of the ship. Across from him, the downers held each other and moaned. Two. Pell detention. Red Sector 1. May 20. So it's written as 5/20/52, and I know it's 2352, and I know it's May 20th because it's written American style. Um, but I'm sort of debating with myself whether I should just read the numbers or not. I'll keep transliterating. I'm going to occasionally flub it, but don't worry. 2. Pell detention. Red Sector 1. May 20th, 2352. 0900 hours. The prisoner sat still at the table with the three of them, stared at the guard supervisor in a lot of bogus calls today. The prisoner sat still at the table with the three of them, stared at the guard supervisor in preference, his eyes seemingly focused somewhere beyond. Damon laid the folder on the table again and studied the man, who was most of all trying not to look at him. Damon found himself intensely uncomfortable in this interview, different from the criminals he dealt with in legal affairs. This man, this face like an angel in a painting, this too perfect humanity with blond hair and eyes that gazed through things. Beautiful, the word occurred to him. There were no flaws. The look was complete innocence. No thief, no brawler, but this man would kill, if such a man could kill, for politics. For duty, because he was Union and they were not. There was no hate involved. It was disturbing to hold the life or death of such a man in his hands. It gave him choices in turn, mirror-imaged choices, not for hate, but for duty, because he was not Union, and this man was. We're at war, Damon thought miserably. Because he's come here, the war has. An angel's face. No trouble to you, is he? Damon asked the supervisor. Nope. I've heard he's a good midge player. That got a flicker from both of them. There were illicit gamblings at the detention station, as in most slow posts during altar day. Damon offered a smile when the prisoner looked his way, the least shifting of the pale blue eyes. Went sober again as the prisoner failed to react. I'm Damon Constantine, Mr. Tally, of the station legal office. You've given us no trouble, and we appreciate that. We're not your enemies. We'd dock a Union fleet as readily as a company ship, in principle, but you don't leave stations neutral any longer, not from what we hear, so our attitude has to change along with that. We just can't take chances having you loose. Repatriation? No. We're given other instructions. Our own security. You understand that. No response. Your counsels made the point that you're suffering in this close confinement and that the cells were never meant for long-term detention, that there are people walking loose in Q who are far more a threat to this station, that there's a vast difference between a saboteur and an arms comper in uniform who had the bad luck to be picked up by the wrong side. But having said all that, he still doesn't recommend your release except to Q. We have an arrangement worked out. We can fake an ID that would protect you and still let us keep track of you over there. I don't like the idea, but it seems workable. What's Q? Tally asked, a soft, anxious voice, appealing to the supervisor and to his own counsel, the older Jacoby, who sat at the end of the table. What are you saying? Quarantine. The sealed sections of the station we've set apart for our own refugees. Tally's eyes darted nervously from one to the other of them. No, no, I don't want to be put with them. I never asked him to set this up. I didn't. Damon frowned uncomfortably. We've got other convoy coming in, Mr. Tally. We've got another convoy coming in, Mr. Tally. Another group of refugees. We have arrangements underway to mix you with them with faked papers. Get you out of here. It would still be a kind of confinement, but with wider walls, room to walk where you want, live life, as it's lived in Q. That's a good part of the station over there. Not regimented. Open. No cells. Mr. Jacoby's right. You're no more dangerous than some over there. Less, because we'd always know who you are. Tally cast another look at his counsel, shook his head, pleading. You absolutely reject it? Damon prodded him, vexed. All solutions and arrangements collapsed. It's not prison, you understand. My face is known there. Mallory said... He lapsed into silence. Damon stared at him, marked the fevered anxiety, the sweat which stood on Tally's face. What did Mallory say? That if I made trouble, she'd transfer me to one of the other ships. I think I know what you're doing. You think if there are Unionists with them, they'd contact me if you put me over there in your quarantine. Is that it? But I wouldn't live that long. There are people who know me by sight. Station officials, police. They're the kind who got places on those ships, aren't they? And they'd know me. I'll be dead in an hour if you do that. I heard what those ships were like. Mallory told you. Mallory told me. There are some, on the other hand, Damon said, bitterly, who'd balk at boarding one of Mazian's ships, stationers who'd swear an honest man's survival wasn't that likely. But I'd reckon you had a soft passage, didn't you? Enough to eat and no worries about the air? The old spacer-stationer quarrel. Leave the stationers to suffocate and keep her own decks spotless. But you rated differently. You got special treatment. It wasn't all that pleasant, Mr. Constantine. Not your choice either, was it? No. The answer came hoarsely. Damon suddenly repented his baiting, nagged by suspicions, evil rumor of the fleet. He was ashamed of the role in which he was cast, in which Pell was. War and prisoners of war. He wanted no part of it. You refuse the solution we offer, he said. That's your privilege. No one will force you. We don't want to endanger your life, and that's what it would be if things are what you say. So what do? I suppose you go on playing midge with the guards. It's a very small confinement. Did they give you the tapes and player? You got that? I would like. The words came out like an upwelling of nausea. I want to ask for adjustment. Jacoby looked down and shook his head. Damon sat still. If I were adjusted, I could get out of here, the prisoner said. Eventually do something. It's my own request. A prisoner always has the option to have that, doesn't he? Your side uses that on prisoners, Damon said. We don't. I ask for it. You have me locked up like a criminal. If I'd killed someone, wouldn't I have a right to it? If I'd stolen, or... I think you ought to have some psychiatric testing if you keep on insisting on it. Don't they test when they process for adjustment? Damon looked at Jacoby. He's been increasingly depressed, Jacoby said. He's asked me over and over to lodge that request with Station, and I haven't. We've never mandated adjustment for a man who wasn't convicted of a crime. Have you ever, the prisoner asked, had a man in here who wasn't? Union uses it, the supervisor said in a low voice, without blinking. Those cells are small, Mr. Constantine. A man doesn't ask for a thing like that, Damon said. I ask, Tally insisted. I ask you. I want out of here. It would solve the problem, Jacoby said. I want to know why he wants it. I want out! Damon froze. Tally caught his breath, leaning against the table, and recovered his composure a little short of tears. Adjustment was not a punitive procedure, was never intended to be. It had double benefits. Altered behavior for the violent, and a little wiping of the slate for the troubled. It was the latter, he suspected, meeting Tally's shadowed eyes. Suddenly he felt an overwhelming pity for the man, who was sane, who seemed very, very sane. The station was in crisis. Events crowded in on them in which individuals could become lost, shoved aside. Cells in detention were urgently needed for real criminals, out of queue, which they had in abundance. There were worse fates than adjustment. Being locked in a viewless 8 by 10 room for life was one. Pull the commitment papers out of comp, he told the supervisor, and the supervisor passed the order via com. Jacoby fretted visibly, shuffling papers and not looking at any of them. What I'm going to do, Damon said to Tally, feeling as if it were some shared bad dream, is put the papers in your hands, and you can study all the printouts of explanation that goes with them. If that's still what you want tomorrow, we'll accept them, signed. I want you also to write us a release and request in your own words, stating that this was your idea and your choice, that you're not claustrophobic or suffering from any other disability. I was an arms comper, Tally interjected scornfully. It was not the largest station on a ship. Or condition which would cause you unusual duress. Don't you have kin, relatives, someone who would try to talk you out of this if they ever heard about it? The eyes reacted to that, ever so slightly. Do you have someone? Damon asked, hoping he had found a handhold, some reason to apply against this. Who? Dead, Tally said. If this request is in reaction to that, a long time ago, Tally said, cutting that off. Nothing more. An angel's face. Humanity without flaw. Birth labs? The thought came to him unbidden. It had always been abhorrent to him, Union's engineered soldiers. His own possible prejudice worried at him. I haven't read your file in full, he admitted. This has been handled at other levels. They thought they had this settled. It bounced back to me. You had family, Mr. Tally? Yes, Tally said faintly, defiantly, making him ashamed of himself. Born where? Saitine. The same small, flat voice. I've given you all that. I had parents. I was born, Mr. Constantine. Is that really pertinent? I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. I want you to understand this. It's not final. You can change your mind right up to the moment the treatment begins. All you have to say is stop. I don't want this. But after it goes so far, you're not competent. You understand, you're no longer able. You've seen adjusted men? They recover. They do recover. I'll follow the case, Mr. Tally. Lieutenant Tally, so much as I can. You see to it, he said to the supervisor, that any time he sends a message, at any stage of the process, it gets to me on an emergency basis, day or night. You see that the attendants understand that, too, down to the orderlies. I don't think he'll abuse the privilege. He looked at Jacoby. Are you satisfied about your client? It's his right to do what he's doing. I'm not pleased with it, but I'll witness it. I'll agree it solves things. Maybe for the best. The comp printout arrived. Damon handed the papers to Jacoby for scrutiny. Jacoby marked the lines for signature and passed the folder to Tally. Tally folded it to him like something precious. Mr. Tally, Damon said, rising, and on impulse offered his hand, against all the distaste he felt. The young arms-comper rose and took it, and the look of gratitude in his suddenly brimming eyes cancelled all certainties. Is it possible, Damon asked, is it remotely possible that you have information you want wiped? That's why you're doing this? I warn you, it's more likely to come out in the process than not. And we're not interested in it. Do you understand that? We have no military interests. That was not it. He much doubted that it could be. This was no high officer, no one like himself, who knew comp signals, access codes, the sort of thing an enemy must not have. No one had discovered the like in this man. Nothing of value, not here, not at Russell's. No, Tally said, I don't know anything. Damon hesitated, still nagged by conscience, the feeling that Tally's counsel, if no one else, ought to be protesting, doing something more vigorous, using all the delays of the law on Tally's behalf. But that got him prison, got him no hope. They were bringing Q outlaws into detention, far more dangerous, men who might know him, if Tally was right. Adjustment saved him, got him out of here, gave him the chance for a job, for freedom, a life. There was no one sane who would carry out revenge on someone after a mind wipe, and the process was humane. It was always meant to be. Tally, have you complaint against Mallory or the personnel of Norway? No. Your counsel is present. It would be put on record, if you wanted to make such a complaint. No. So that trick would not work. No delaying it for investigation. Damon nodded, walked out of the room, feeling unclean. It was a manner of murder he was doing, an assistance in suicide. They had an abundance of those, too, over in Q. Three. Pell, Sector Orange 9, May 20th, 23:52, 1900 hours. Kressich winced at the crash of something down the hall, beyond the sealed door, tried not to show his terror. Something was burning, smoke reaching them through the ventilation system. That more frightened him, and the 100 gathered with him in this section of hallway. Out on the docks, the police and the rioters still fired at each other. The violence was subsiding. The few with him, the remainder of Russell's own security police, a handful of elite stationers, and a scattering of young people and old, they had held the hallway against the gangs. "We're afire," someone muttered, on the edge of hysteria. "Old rags or something," he said. Shut it up, he thought. They did not need a panic. In a major fire, Station Central would blow a section to put it out. Death for all of them. They were not valuable to Pell. Some of them were out there shooting at Pell police with guns they had gotten off dead policemen. It had started with the knowledge that there was another convoy coming in, more ships, more desperate people to crowd into the little that they had, and started with the simple word that this was about to happen, and a demand for faster processing of papers, then raids on barracks and gangs confiscating papers from those who did have them. "Burn all records!" The cry had gone out through quarantine, in the logic that, recordless, they would all be admitted. Those who would not yield up their papers were beaten and robbed of them, of anything else of value. Barracks were ransacked. Gangs of the ruffians who had forced Griffin and Hansford gained membership among the desperate, the young, the leaderless, and the panicked. There was quiet for a time outside. The fans had stopped. The air began to go foul. Among those who had seen the worst of the voyage, there was panic, quietly contained. A good number were crying. Then the lights brightened, and a cool draught came through the ducts. The door whipped open. Cresich got to his feet and looked into the faces of station police, and the barrels of leveled rifles. Some of his own band had knives, sections of pipe, and furniture, whatever weapons they had improvised. He had nothing, held up frantic hands. "No!" he pleaded. No one moved, not the police, not his own. "Please! We weren't in it. We only defended this section from them. None of these people were involved. They were the victims." The police leader, face haggard with weariness and soot and blood, motioned with his rifle toward the wall. "You have to line up," Cresich explained to his ill-assorted companions, who were not the sort to understand such procedures, except only the ex-police. "Drop whatever weapons you have." They lined up, even the old and the sick, and the two small children. Cresich found himself shaking, while he was searched and after, left leaning against the corridor wall while the police muttered mysteriously among themselves. One seized him by the shoulder, faced him about. An officer with a slate walked from one to the other of them, asking for IDs. "They were stolen," Cresich said. "That's how it started. The gangs were stealing papers and burning them." "We know that," the officer said. "Are you in charge? What's your name and origin?" "Vasily Cresich, Russell's." "Others of you know him?" Several confirmed it. "He was a station counselor on Russell's," said a young man. "I served there in security." "Name?" The young man gave it. Nino Kolody. Cresich tried to recall him and could not. One by one, the questions were repeated, cross-examination of identifications, mutual identifications, no more reliable than the word of those who gave them. A man with a camera came into the hallway and photographed them all standing against the wall. They stood in a chaos of calm chatter and discussion. "You can go," the police leader said, and they began to file out. But when Cresich started to leave, the officer caught his arm. "Vasily Cresich, I'll be giving your name to headquarters." He was not sure whether that was good or bad. Anything was a hope. Anything was better than what existed here in Q, with the station stalling and unable to place them or clear them out. He walked out onto the dock itself, shaken by the sight of the wreckage that had been made here, with the dead still lying in their blood, piles of combustibles still smoldering, what furnishings and belongings had remained heaped up to burn. Station police were everywhere, armed with rifles, no light arms. He stayed on the docks, close to the police, afraid to go back into the corridors for fear of the terrorist gangs. It was impossible to hope for the it was impossible to hope the police had gotten them all. There were far too many. Eventually, the station set up an emergency dispensary for food and drink near the section line, for the water had been shut down during the emergency, the kitchens vandalized, everything turned to weapons. Comm had been vandalized. There was no way to report damage, and no repair crews were likely to want to come into the area. He sat on the bare dock and ate what they were given in company with the other small knots of refugees who had no more than he. People looked on each other in fear. "We aren't getting out," he heard repeatedly. "They'll never clear us to leave now." More than once he heard mutterings of a different sort, saw men he knew had been in the gangs of rioters, which had begun in his barracks, and no one reported them. No one dared. They were too many. Unionizers were among them. He became sure that these were the agitators, unionizers being people of union, not people who work in a union. It's different. It's different. He became sure that these were the agitators. Such men might have most to fear in a tight check of papers. The war had reached Pell. It was among them, and they were as stationers had always been, neutral and empty-handed, treading carefully among those who meant murder. Only now it was not stationers against warships, metal shell against metal shell. The danger was shoulder to shoulder with them. Perhaps the young man with the hoarded sandwich, the young woman who sat and stared with hateful eyes. The convoy came in, without troops for escort. Dock crews under the protection of a small army of station police managed the unloading. Refugees were let through, processed as best could be, with most of the housing wrecked, with the corridors become a jungle. The newcomers stood, baggage in hand, staring about them with terror in their eyes. They would be robbed by morning, Crescich reckoned, or worse. He heard people around him simply crying softly, despairing. By morning there was yet another group of several hundred, and by now there was panic, for they were all hungry and thirsty, and food arrived from main station very slowly. A man settled on the deck near him. Nino Colody. "There's a dozen of us," Colody said. "Could have sort some of this out. Been talking to some of the gang survivors. We don't give out names and they cooperate. We've got strong arms. Could straighten this mess out. Get people back into residences so we can get some food and water in here." "What, we?" Collody's face took on a grimace of earnestness. "You were a counselor. You stand up front. You do the talking. We keep you there. Get these people fed. Get ourselves a soft place here. Station needs that. We can benefit by it." Crescich considered it. It could also get them shot. He was too old for this. They wanted a figurehead. A police gang wanted a respectable figurehead. He was also afraid to tell them no. Oh, let me reread that. Crescich considered this. It could also get them shot. He was too old for this. They wanted a figurehead. A police gang wanted a respectable figurehead. He was also afraid to tell them no. "You just do the talking out front," Colody said. "Yes," he agreed, and then, setting his jaw with more firmness than Colody might have expected of a tired old man, "you start rounding up your men, and I'll have a talk with the police." He did so, approaching them gingerly. "There's been an election," he said. "I'm Vasily Crescich, counselor from Red 2, Russell Station. Some of our own police are among the refugees. We're prepared to go into the corridors and establish order without violence. We know faces. You don't. If you consult your own authorities and get it cleared, we can help." They were not sure of that. There was hesitation even about calling in. Finally, a police captain did so, and Crescich stood, fretting. The captain nodded at last. "If it gets out of hand," the captain said, "we won't discriminate in firing. But we're not going to tolerate any killing on your part, Councillor Crescich. It's not open license." "Have patience, sir," Crescich said, and walked away. mortally tired and frightened. Collody was there, with several others, waiting for him by the Niner corridor access. In a few moments there were more drifting to them, less savory than the first. He feared them. He feared not to have them. He cared for nothing now except to live, and to be atop the force and not under it. He watched them go, using terror to move the innocent, gathering the dangerous into their own ranks. He knew what he had done. It terrified him. He kept silent because he would be caught in the second riot, part of it, if it happened. They would see to that. He assisted, used his dignity and his age and the fact that his face was known to some, shouted directions, began to have folk addressing him respectfully as Counselor Cressage. Sorry. He listened to their griefs and their fears and their angers until Collody flung a guard about him to protect their precious figurehead. Within the hour the docks were clear and the legitimized gangs were in control, and honest people deferred to him wherever he went. One sec here. I have a bit of artwork floating around that I have to dig up. No. Yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. I think it's that one. Yep. Okay. Very good. Perfect. This is kind of a cross section of part of the station. There's another one of these that I'll share next week. You can. This is not from my edition, unfortunately. I wish I had this in my edition. It would be handy, but it's still. It gives you an idea of how well thought out this is. Kind of the space being worked with. Chapter 7. 1. Pell, May 22nd, 2352. John Lucas settled into the council seat his son Vittorio had sat proxy for during the last 3 years, and sat scowling. Already he had been up against one in family crisis. He had lost 3 rooms of his 5-room lodging, literally sliced off by moving a partition to accommodate 2 Jacoby cousins and their partners in alter-day rotation, one of them with children who banged the wall and cried. His furnishings had been piled by workmen into what was left of his privacy, lately occupied by son Vittorio and his current affection. That had been a homecoming. He and Vittorio had reached a quick understanding. The woman walked out and Vittorio stayed, finding that possession of an apartment and an expense account more important, and far better than transfer to Downbelow base, which was actively seeking young volunteers. Physical labor, and on Downbelow's rainy surface, was not to Vittorio's taste. As figurehead up here he had been useful, voted as he was told, managed as he was told, had kept Lucas company out of chaos, at least, having sense enough to solve minor problems on his own and to ask about the major ones. What he had done with the expense account was another matter. John had spent his time, after adjusting to station hours, down in company offices going over the books, reviewing personnel and those expense accounts. Now there was some kind of alert on, ugly and urgent. He had come as other counselors had come, brought in by a message that a special meeting was called. His heart was still hammering from the exertion. He keyed in his desk unit and his mic, listening to the thin com chatter which occupied council at the moment, with a succession of ship scan images on the screens overhead. More trouble. He had heard it all the way up from the dockside offices. Something was coming in. "What number do you have?" Angelo was asking, and getting no response from the other side.
What is this?
John asked the woman next to him, a Green Sector delegate, Anna Moravy.
More refugees coming in, and they're not saying anything. The carrier Pacific, Esperance Station, that's all we know. We're not getting any cooperation, but that's Sung out there. What do you expect?
Other counselors were still arriving, the tiers filling rapidly. He slipped the personal audio into his ear, punched in the recorder, trying to get current of the situation. The convoy on scan had come in far too close for safety, above system plane. The voice of the council secretary whispered on, summarizing, offering visuals to his desk screen, none of it much more than what they had before them live. A page worked through to the back row, leaned over his shoulder, and handed him a handwritten note. Welcome back, he read, perplexed. You are designated proxy to Emilio Constantine's seat, number 10. Your immediate experience of Downbelow deemed valuable. A. Constantine. Constantin. His heart sped again, for different reasons. He gathered himself to his feet, laid down the earplug, and turned off the channels, walked down the aisle under the view of all of them, to that vacant seat on the Central Council, the table amid the tiers, the seats which carried most influence. He reached that seat, settled into the fine leather and the carved wood, one of the 10 of Pell, and felt an irrepressible flush of triumph amid these events. Justice done, finally, after decades. The great Constantines had held him off and maneuvered him out of the 10 all his life, despite his strivings and his influence and his merits, and now he was here. Not by any change of heart on Angelo's part, he was absolutely sure. It had to be voted. He had won some general vote here in Council, the logical consequence of his long, tough service on Downbelow. His record had found appreciation in a council majority. He met Angelo's eyes down the table. Angelo holding the audio plug to his ear, looking at him still with no true welcome, no love, no happiness whatsoever. Angelo accepted his elevation because he must, that was clear. John smiled tightly, not with his eyes, as if it were an offer of support. Angelo returned it, and not with the eyes either. Put it through again, Angelo said to someone else via comm. Keep sending. Get me contact direct to Sung. The assembly was hushed, reports still coming in, chatter from Central, the slow progress of approaching freighters, but Pacific was gathering speed, going into comp projected haze on scan.
Sung here, a voice reached them. Salutations to Pell Station. Your own establishment can attend the details.
What is the number you're giving us? Angelo asked. What number is on those ships, Captain Sung?
9,000.
A murmur of horror broke in the chamber. Silence! Angelo said. It was obscuring calm. We copy 9,000. This will tax our facilities beyond safety. We request that you meet us here in Council, Captain Sung. We have had refugees come in from Russell's on unescorted merchanters. We were constrained to accept them. For humanitarian reasons, it is impossible to refuse such dockings. Request you inform Fleet Command of this dangerous situation. We need military support, do you understand, sir? Request you come in for urgent consultation with us. We are willing to cooperate, but we are approaching a point of very difficult decision. We appeal for fleet support. Repeat, will you come in, sir? There was a little silence from the other side. The council shifted in their seats, for approach alarms were flashing, screens flickering and clouding madly in their attempt to reckon with the carrier's accelerating approach.
Our last scheduled convoy, the reply came, is coming in under Kreshov of Atlantic from Pan Paris. Good luck, Pell Station.
The contact was abruptly broken. Scan flashed, the vast carrier still gathering speed more than anything should in a station's vicinity. John had never seen Angelo angrier. The murmur in the council chamber deafened, and finally the microphone established relative silence again. Pacific shot to their zenith, disrupting the screens into breakup. When they cleared, it had passed on, to take an unauthorized course, leaving them its flotsam, the freighters moving in at their slow, inexorable pace toward dock. Somewhere there was a muted call for security to Q. Reserve forces. Angelo ordered one of the section chiefs over comm. Call up off-duty personnel. I don't care how many times they've had call-up. Keep order in there if you have to shoot to do it. Central, scramble crews to the shuttles. Herd those merchanters into the right docks. Throw a cordon of short-haulers in the way if that's what it takes. And after a moment, as the collision alarms died and there was only the steady remaining report of the freighters on their slow way toward station. We have to get more space for Q, Angelo said, staring around him, and with regret we're going to have to take those 2 levels of red section, partition them in with Q, immediately. There was a sorrowful murmur from the tiers, and the screens flashed with an immediate registered objection from red section delegates. It was perfunctory. There were no supporters on the screen to second their objection and bring it to vote. Absolutely, Angelo continued, without even looking at it. We can't dislodge any more residents or lose those upper-level routings for the transport system. Can't. If we can't get support from the fleet, we'll have to take other measures. And on a major scale, we have to start shifting population to somewhere. John Lucas, with apologies for short notice, but we wish you could have made yesterday's meeting. That tabled proposal of yours. Our on-station construction can't handle security risk workers. At one time you had plans in some detail for widening the base on Downbelow. What's the status for those? He blinked, suspicious and hopeful at once, frowned at the barb Angelo had to sling even now. He gathered himself to his feet, which he did not need to do, but he wanted to see faces.
If I had received notification of the situation, I would have made every effort. As it was, I came with all possible haste. As for the proposal, by no means impossible. Housing that number on Downbelow could be done in short order, with no difficulty, except for those housed there. The conditions, after 3 years, I can tell you, are primitive. Downer labor making pit housing, air tightened to a reasonable extent, enough compressors, and the simplest locally available materials for the bracing. Downer labor is always the most efficient down there, no inconvenience of breathers, but humans in great enough numbers can replace them. Field work, manufacture, clearing land, digging their own dome shells. Just enough Pell staff to supervise and guard them. Confinement is no problem. Particularly your more difficult cases would do well down there. You take those breathers away and they're not going anywhere or doing anything you don't want.
Mr. Lucas. Anton Eisel stood up, an old man, a friend of Angelo's and a stubborn do-gooder.
Mr. Lucas, Mr. Lucas, I must misunderstand what I'm hearing. These are free citizens. We're not talking about establishing penal colonies. These are refugees. We're not turning Downbelow into a labor camp.
Torque! Someone shouted from the tiers. See what a wreck they've made out of those sections. We had homes there, beautiful homes. Vandalism and destruction. They're tearing up the place. They've attacked our security people with pipes and kitchen knives, and who knows if we got all the guns back after the riot. There've been murders over there, someone else shouted. Gangs of hoodlums.
No, said a third, a strange voice in council. Heads turned to the thin man who had taken a seat, John saw, in the place he himself had vacated above. The person stood up, a nervous, sallow-faced individual. My name is Vasily Kresich. I was invited to come out of Q. I was a counselor on Russell Station. I represent Q. All that you say did happen in a panic, but there's order now, and the hoodlums have been removed to your detention. John drew a breath.
Welcome to Counselor Kresich, but for the sake of Q itself, pressures should be relieved. Population should be transferred. The station has waited a decade on the Downbelow expansion, and now we have the manpower to begin it on a large scale. Those who work become part of the system. They build what they themselves live in. Does the gentleman from Q not agree?
We need our papers cleared. We refuse to be transferred anywhere without papers. This happened to us once, and look at our situation. Further transfers without clear paper can only add to our predicament, taking us further and further from any hope of establishing identity. The people I represent will not let it happen again. Is this a threat, Mr. Kressich? Angelo said. The man looked close to collapse. No, he said quickly. No, sir. I am speaking the opinion of the people. I represent their desperation. They have to have their papers cleared. Anything else, any other solution, is what the gentleman says. A labor camp for the benefit of Pell. Is that what you intend? Mr. Kressich, said Angelo, will everyone please settle themselves to take things in order? You'll be heard in your turn, Mr. Kressich. John Lucas, will you continue? I'll have the precise figures as soon as I can have access to Central Comp. I need to be brought current with the keys. Every facility on Downbelow can be expanded, yes. I still have the detailed plans. I'll have a cost and labor analysis available within a matter of days. Angelo nodded, looking at him, frowning. It could not be a pleasant moment for him. We're fighting for our survival, Angelo said. Plainly, there's a point where we seriously have to worry about our life support systems. Some of the load has to be moved, nor can we allow the ratio of Pell citizens to refugees to become unbalanced. We have to be concerned about riot, there and here. Apologies, Mr. Kressich. These are the realities under which we live, not of our choosing, nor, I'm sure, of yours. We can't risk the station or the base on Downbelow, or we find ourselves all on freighters, bound for Earth, stripped of everything. That is the third choice. No, the murmur went around the room. John sat down, silent, staring at Angelo, reckoning Pell's present fragile balance and odds as they existed. You've lost already, he thought of saying, of standing up in council and laying things out as they were. He did not. He sat with his mouth tightly closed. It was a matter of time. Peace might afford a chance. But that was far from what was shaping out there with this influx of refugees from all these stations. They had all the beyond flowing in two directions like a watershed, toward themselves and toward union, and they were not equipped to handle it under Angelo's kind of rules. Year upon year of Constantine rule, Constantine social theory, the vaunted community of law, which disdained security and monitoring, and now refused to use the clenched fist on cue, hoping that vocal appeals were going to win a mob over to order. He could bring that matter up too. He sat still. There was a bad taste in his mouth, reckoning that what chaos Constantine leniency had wrought. Oh, jeez. There was a bad taste in his mouth, reckoning that what chaos Constantine leniency had wrought on the station, it would manage to recon down below too. Okay. There was a bad taste in his mouth, reckoning that what chaos Constantine leniency had wrought on the station, it would manage to wreak on Downbelow too. He foresaw no success for the plans he was asked for. Emilio Constantine and his wife would be in charge of the work, two of a kind. Who would let the Downers take their own time about schedules and protect their superstitions and let them do things on their own leisurely, lackadaisical way, which ended with equipment damaged and construction delayed. And what that pair would do with what was over in Q offered worse prospects. He sat still, estimating their chances and drawing unhappy conclusions. Two.
It can't survive,
He said to Vittorio that night, to his son Vittorio, and to Dean Jacobi, the only relative he favored. He leaned back in his chair and drank bitter downer wine in his apartment, which was piled with the stacked expensive furniture which had been in the other severed rooms.
Pell's falling apart under us. Angelo's soft-handed policies are going to lose it for us and maybe get our throats cut in riot into the bargain. It's going, you understand me? And do we sit and take what comes?
Vittorio looked suddenly whey-faced, as his habit was when talk turned serious. Dian was of another sort. He sat grim and thoughtful.
A contact, John said, yet more plainly, has to exist.
Dian nodded. Dayin? D-A-Y-I-N. Dayin? I'm not really sure how that name is pronounced. Maybe it is Dayin. That almost makes sense. Dayin nodded.
In times like these, two doors might be a sensible necessity, and I'm sure doors exist all over this station, with the right keys.
How compromised do you reckon those doors are? And where? Your cousins handled cases of some of our transients. You have any ideas?
Black market and rejuve drugs and others, that's in full flower here, don't you know? Constantine himself gets it. You got it on Downbelow.
It's legal.
Of course it's legal. It's necessary. But how does it get here? Ultimately, it comes from Union side. Merchanters deal, it comes through. Someone, somewhere is into the pipeline. Merchanters, maybe even station side contacts.
So how do we get one to get a contact back up the pipeline?
I can learn.
I know one, Vittorio said, startling them both. He licked his lips, swallowed heavily. Rosine.
That whore of yours?
She knows the market. There's a security officer, high up. Clean paper all the way, but he's bought by the market. You want something unloaded or loaded, want a blind eye turned, he can arrange it. John stared at his son, this product of a year's contract, his desperation to have an heir. It was not, after all, surprising that Vittorio knew such things.
Excellent, he said dryly. You can tell me about it. Maybe we can trace something. Dain, our holdings at Viking. We should look into them.
You aren't serious.
I'm very serious. I've engaged Hansford. Her crew is still in hospital. Her interior's a shambles, but she'll go. They need the money desperately. And you can find the crew through those contacts of Vittorio's. Don't have to tell them everything, just sufficient to motivate them.
Viking's the next likely trouble spot, the next certain trouble spot.
A risk, isn't it? A lot of freighters have accidents with things as they are. Some vanish. I hear from Constantine over it, but all have the out. An act of faith in Viking's future. A confirmation, a vote of confidence.
He drank the wine with a twist of his mouth.
You'd better go fast before some flood of refugees hits us from Viking itself. You make contact with the pipeline there, follow it as far as you can. What chance has Pell got now but with Union? The company's no help. The fleet's adding to our problem. We can't stand forever. Constantine's policies are going to see riot here before all's done, and it's time for a changing of the guard. You'll make that clear to Union. You understand. They get an ally. We get as much as we can get out of the association. That second door to jump through at worst. If Pell holds, we just sit still, safe. If not, we're better off than others, aren't we?
And I'm the one risking my neck, Dain said.
So, would you rather be here when a riot finally breaks through those barriers, or would you rather have a chance to make some personal gain with a grateful opposition? Line your own pockets. I'm sure you will, and I'm sure you'll have deserved it.
Generous, Dain said sourly.
Life here, John said, isn't going to be any better. It could be very uncomfortable. It's a gamble. What isn't?
Dain nodded slowly. I'll run down some prospects for a crew.
Thought you would.
You trust too much, John.
Only this side of the family.
Never Constantine's. Angelo should have left me there on Downbelow. He probably wishes he could have. But council voted otherwise, and maybe that was lucky for them. Maybe it was. It occurs to me that I think Angelo might be the patriarch of the family, and I read his voice wrong. I can't remember now. It's a big cast. Uh, and not all of them talk frequently. Anyway, Chapter 8 Pell, May 23rd, 2352. They offered a chair. They were always courteous, always called him Mr. Tally, and never by his rank. Civ habit, or maybe they made the point that here Unioners were still counted rebels and had no rank. Perhaps they hated him, but they were unfailingly gentle with him and unfailingly kind. It frightened him all the same, because he suspected it false. They gave him more papers to fill out. A doctor sat down opposite him at the table and tried to explain the procedures in detail. "I don't want to hear that," he said. "I just want to sign the papers. I've had days of this. Isn't that enough?" "Your tests weren't honestly taken," the doctor said. "You lied and gave false answers in the interview. Instruments indicated you were lying or under stress. I asked, was there constraint on you, and the instruments said you lied when you said there wasn't." "Give me the pen." "Is someone forcing you? Your answers are being recorded." "No one's forcing me." "This is also a lie, Mr. Tally." "No." He tried and failed to keep his voice from shaking. "We normally deal with criminals who also tend to lie." The doctor held up the pen out of easy reach. "Sometimes with the self-committed, very rarely. It's a form of suicide. You have a medical right to it, within certain legal restrictions, and so long as you've been counseled and understand what's involved. If you continue your therapy on schedule, you should begin to function again in about a month. Legal independence with 6 more. Full function, you understand that there may be permanent impairment to your ability to function socially. There could be other psychological or physical impairments." He snatched the pen and signed the papers. The doctor took them and looked at them. Finally, the doctor drew a paper from his pocket, pushed it across the table, a rumpled and much folded scrap of paper. He smoothed it out, saw a note with half a dozen signatures. "Your account in Station Comp has 50 credits, for anything you want on the side." 6 of the detention guards had signed it, the men and women he played cards with, given out of their own pockets. Tears blurred his eyes. "Want to change your mind?" the doctor asked. He shook his head, folded the paper. "Can I keep it?" "It will be kept along with your other effects. You'll get everything back on your release." "It won't matter then, will it?" "Not at that point," the doctor said. "Not for some time." He handed the paper back. "I'll get you a tranquilizer," the doctor said, and called for an attendant, who brought it in, a cup of blue liquid. He accepted it and drank it and felt no different for it. The doctor pushed blank paper in front of him and laid the pen down. "Write down your impressions of Pell. Will you do that?" He began. He had had stranger requests in the days that they had tested him. He wrote a paragraph, how he had been questioned by the guards, and finally how he felt he had been treated. The words began to grow sideways. He was not writing on the paper. He had run off the edge onto the table and couldn't find his way back. The letters wrapped around each other, tied in knots. The doctor reached and lifted the pen from his hand, robbing him of purpose. Chapter 9 1. Pell, May 28th, 2352. Damon looked over at the report on his desk. It was not the procedure he was used to, the martial law which existed in Q. It was rough and quick and came across his desk with a trio of film cassettes and a stack of forms condemning 5 men to adjustment. He viewed the film, jaw clenched, the scenes of riot leaping across the large wall screen, flinched at recorded murder. There was no question of the crime or the identification. There was, in the stack of cases which had flooded the L.A. office, no time for reconsiderations or niceties. They were dealing with a situation which could bring the whole station down, turn it all into the manner of thing that had come in with Hansford. Once life support was threatened, once men were crazy enough to build bonfires on a station dock, or go for station police with kitchen knives. He pulled the files in question, keyed up printout on the authorization. There was no fairness in it, for they were the 5 the security police had been able to pull across the line, 5 out of many more as guilty. But they were 5 who would not kill again, nor threaten the frail stability of a station containing many thousands of lives. Total adjustment, he wrote, which meant personality restruct. Processing would turn up injustice if he had done one. Processing would turn up injustice if he had done one. What? Sorry, I got lost in the sauce and now the sentence eludes me. It's gobbledygook. It's not gobbledygook. My brain just isn't making proper brain connections. Turn up injustice if he had done one. Question would determine innocence if any existed at this point. Okay. Total adjustment, he wrote, which meant personality restruct. Processing would turn up injustice if he had done one. Questioning would determine innocence if any existed at this point. He felt foul in doing what he did, and frightened. Martial law was far too sudden. His father had agonized the night long in making one such decision after a board had passed on it. A copy went to the public defender's office. They would interview in person, lodge appeals if warranted. That procedure, too, was curtailed under present circumstance. It could be done only by producing evidence of error, and evidence was in queue, unreachable. Injustices were possible. They were condemning on the word of police under attack and the viewing of film which did not show what had gone before. There were 500 reports of theft and major crimes on his desk when before there had been a queue they might have dealt with 2 or 3 such complaints a year. Comp was flooded with data requests. There had been days of work done on IDs and papers for Q, and all of that was scrapped. Papers had been stolen and destroyed to such an extent in Q that no paper could be trusted to be accurate. Most of the claims to paper were probably fraudulent, and loudest from the dishonest. Affidavits were worthless where threat ruled. People would swear to anything for safety. Even the ones who had come in good order were carrying paper they had no confirmation on. Security confiscated cards and papers to save those from theft, and they were passing some few out where they were able to establish. Oh my God. Even the ones who had come in good order were carrying paper they had no confirmation on. Security confiscated cards and papers to save those from theft, and they were passing some few out where they were able to establish absolute ID and find a station-side sponsor for them. But it was slow compared to the rate of influx, and Main Station had no place to put them when they did. It was madness. They tried with all their resources to eliminate red tape and hurry, and it just got worse. Tom, he keyed, a private note to Tom Ushant in the defender's office. If you get a gut feeling that something's wrong in any of these cases, appeal it back to me regardless of procedures. We're putting through too many condemnations too fast. Mistakes are possible. I don't want to find one out after processing starts. He had not expected reply. It came through. Damon, look at the tally file if you want something to disturb your sleep. Russell's used adjustment. You mean he's been through it? Not therapy. I mean they used it questioning him. I'll look at it. He keyed out, hunted the access number, pulled the file in comp display. Page after page of their own interrogation data flicked past on the screen, most of it uninformative. Ship name and number, duties. An arms comper might know the board in front of him and what he shot at, but little more. Memories of home, then. Family killed in a fleet raid on Cytine system mines. A brother killed in service. Reason enough to carry grudges if a man wanted to. Reared by his mother's sister on Cytine proper, a plantation of sorts. Then a government school, deep teaching for tech skills. Claimed no knowledge of higher politics, no resentments of the situation. The pages passed into actual transcript, uncondensed, disjointed ramblings, turned to excruciatingly personal things, the kind of intimate detail which surfaced in adjustment, while a good deal of self was being laid bare, examined, sorted. Fear of abandonment, that deepest. Fear of being a burden on his relatives, of deserving to be abandoned. He had a tangled kind of guilt about the loss of his family, had a pervading fear of it happening again, in any involvement with anyone. Loved the aunt. Took care of me, the thread of it ran at one point. Held me sometimes. Held me. Loved me. He had not wanted to leave her home. But union had its demands. He was supported by the state, and they took him when he came of age. After that it was state-run deep teach, taped education, military training, and no passes home. He had had letters from the aunt for a while. The uncle had never written. He believed the aunt was dead now because the letters had stopped some years ago. She would write, he believed. She loved me. But there were deeper fears that she had not, that she had really wanted the state money, and there was guilt, that he had not come home, that he had deserved this parting, too. He had written to the uncle and gotten no answer. That had hurt him, though he and the uncle had never loved each other. Attitudes, beliefs. Another wound, a broken friendship. An immature love affair, another case in which letters stopped coming, and that wound involved itself with the old ones. A later attachment to a companion in service, uncomfortably broken off. He tended to commit himself to a desperate extent. Held me, he repeated, pathetic and secret loneliness. And more things. He began to find it. Terror of the dark. A vague, recurring nightmare. A white place. Interrogation. Drugs. Russells had used drugs against all company policy, against all human rights. Had wanted badly something Tally simply did not have. They had gotten him from Mariner Zone. From Mariner. Transferred to Russell's at the height of the panic. They had wanted information at that threatened station. Had used adjustment techniques in interrogation. Damon rested his mouth against his hand, watched the fragmentary record roll past, sick at his stomach. He felt ashamed at the discovery, naive. He had not questioned Russell's reports, had not investigated them himself, had had other things on his hands, and staff to take care of that matter. Had not, he admitted it, wanted to deal with the case any more than he absolutely had to. Tally had never called him, had conned him, had held himself together, already unstrung from previous treatment, to con Pell into doing the only thing that might put an end to his mental hell. Tally had looked him straight in the eye and arranged his own suicide. The record rambled on, from interrogation under drugs to chaotic evacuation, with stationer mobs on one side and the military threatening him on the other. And what it had been, what had happened during that long voyage, a prisoner on one of Mazian's ships. Norway. And Mallory. He killed the screen, sat staring at the stack of papers, the unfinished condemnations. After a time, he set himself to work again, his fingers numb as he signed the authorizations. Men and women had boarded at Russell's Star, folk who, like Tally, might have been sane before it all started. What had gotten off those ships, what existed over in Q, had been made of folk no different than themselves. He simply pushed the destruct on lives like Tally's, which were already gone. On men like himself, he thought, who had gone over civilized limits, in a place where civilization had stopped meaning anything. Mazian's fleet, even they, even the likes of Mallory, had surely started differently. "I'm not going to challenge," Tom told him, over a lunch they both drank more than ate. And after lunch he went to the small adjustment facility over in Red, and back into the treatment area. He saw Josh Tally. Tally did not see him, although perhaps it would not have mattered. Tally was resting at that hour, having eaten. The tray was still on the table, and he had eaten well. He sat on the bed with a curiously washed expression on his face, all the lines of strain erased. Okay, yeah, I had Angelo confused with Emilio for a sec, but I apologize. 2. Angelo looked up at the aide, took the report of the ship outbound, and scanned the manifests, looked up.
Why, Hansford.
The aide shifted his weight, distressed. Sir?
2 dozen ships idle, and Hansford has a commission to launch, unfitted, and with what crew?
I think crew was hired off the inactive list, sir. Angelo leafed through the report.
Lucas Company, Viking bound with a stripped ship and a dock-bound crew and Diane Jacoby for a passenger. Get John Lucas on the comm.
Sir, the aide said, the ship has already left dock.
I can see the time. Get me John Lucas.
Yes, sir. The aide went out. In moments the screen on the desk went bright, and John Lucas came on. Angelo took a deep breath, calmed himself, angled the report toward the pickup.
See that? You have a question? What's going on here? We have holdings at Viking. Business to carry on. Shall we let our interest there sink into panic and disorder? They're due some reassurance. With Hansford, we had an opportunity to engage a ship at below standard. Economics, Angelo. Is that all? I'm not sure I take your meaning. She carried nothing like full cargo. What kind of commodity do you plan to pick up at Viking? We carry as much as we can with Hansford in her present condition. She'll refit there where facilities are less crowded. Refitting is the hire for which we got her use, if you must know. What she carries will pay the bill. She'll lade full on return. Critical supplies. I'd think you'd be pleased. Diane is aboard to supervise and to administer some business at our Viking office. You're not minded, are you, that this full lading include Lucas Company personnel? Or others? You're not going to sell passage off Viking. You're not going to pull that office out. Ah, that's your concern. That has to be my concern when ships go out of here with no sufficient cargo to justify their moving, headed for a population we can't handle if it panics. I'm telling you, John, we can't take chances on some loose talk or some single company pulling its favorite employees out and starting a panic on another station. Do you hear me? I did discuss the matter with Diane. I assure you our mission is supportive. Commerce has to continue, doesn't it, or we strangle. And before us, Viking. Stations they rely on have collapsed. Let Vikings start running into shortages, and they may be here in our laps with no invitation. We're taking them foodstuffs and chemicals, nothing Pell may run short of, and we have the only 2 usable holds on the ship fully loaded. Is every ship launched subject to this inquisition? I can provide you with the company books if you want to see them. I take this amiss. Whatever our private feelings, Angelo, I think Diane deserves commendation for being willing to go out there under the circumstances. It doesn't deserve a fanfare. We asked for none, but we would have expected something other than accusations. Do you want the books, Angelo? Hardly. Thank you, John, and my apologies. So long as Diane and your ship's master appreciate the hazards, every ship that launches is going to be scrutinized, yes. Nothing personal. Any questions you have, Angelo, so long as they're equally applied. Thank you. Thank you, John. John keyed out. Angelo did so, sat staring at the report, rifled through it, finally signed the authorization after the fact, and dumped it into the record tray. All the offices were running behind. Everyone. They were using too many man-hours and too much comp time on the queue processing. Sir. It was his secretary, Mills. Your son, sir. He keyed acceptance of a call, looked up in some surprise as the door opened instead, and Damon walked in. I brought the processing reports myself, Damon said. He sat down, leaned on the desk with both arms. Damon's eyes looked as tired as he himself felt, which was considerable. I've processed 5 men into adjustment this morning. 5 men isn't a tragedy, Angelo said wearily. I've got a lottery process set up for comp to pick who goes and stays on station. I've got another storm on Downbelow that's flooded the mill again, and they've just found the victims from the last washout. I've got ships pulling at the tether now that the panic's worn down, one that's just slipped, 2 more to go tomorrow. If rumor has it that Mazian's chosen Pell for a refuge, where does that leave the remaining stations? What when they panic and head here by the shipload? And how do we know that someone isn't out there right now selling passage to more frightened people? Our life support won't take much more.
He gestured loosely toward a stack of documents.
We're going to militarize what freighters we can by some pretty strong financial coercion.
To fire on refugee ships?
If ships come in that we can't handle, yes. I'd like to talk to Eleni sometime today. Eileen? I'm still not sure how that's pronounced, said Angelo.
Said Frag, pretending to be Angelo. It could be Eleni. It could be Eileen. Elene. I haven't decided. Eleni is nice, though. Like Selene. Or Celine.
If ships come in that we can't handle, yes. I'd like to talk to Eileen sometime today. She'd be the one to make the initial approach to the merchanters. I can't muster sympathy for 5 rioters today. Forgive me.
His voice cracked. Damon reached across the desk, caught his wrist and pressed it, let go again.
Emilio needs help down there?
He says not. The mill's a shambles. Oh, Emilio needs help down there?
He says not. The mill's a shambles. Mud everywhere.
They find all of them dead?
He nodded.
Last night, Bennett Jacent and Ty Brown. Wes Kyle yesterday noon. This long to hunt the banks and the reeds. Emilio and Milico say morale is all right, considering. The Downers are building dikes. More of them have been anxious for human trade. I've ordered more let into base, and I've authorized some of the trained ones into maintenance up here. Their life support is in good shape, and it frees up some techs we can upgrade. I'm shuttling down every human volunteer who'll go, and that means even trained dock hands. They can handle construction equipment, or they can learn. It's a new age, a tighter one.
He pressed his lips together, sucked in a long breath.
Have you and Eileen thought of Earth?
Sir?
You, your brother, Eileen, and Milico. Think about it, will you?
No, Damon said. Pull out and run? You think that's what it's coming to?
Figure the odds, Damon. We didn't get help from Earth, just observers. They're figuring on cutting their losses, not sending us reinforcements or ships. No, we're just settling lower and lower. Mazian can't hold forever. The shipyards at Mariner were vital. It's Viking soon, and whatever else Union reaches out to take. Union's cutting fleet off from supply. Earth already has. We're out of everything but room to run.
The Hinder Stars. You know there's some talk about reopening one of those stations.
A dream. We'd never have the chance. If the fleet goes, Union would make it a target, same as us, just as quickly. And selfishly, completely selfishly, I'd like to see my children out of here.
Damon's face was very white. No. Absolutely no.
Don't be noble. I'd rather your safety than your help. Constantines won't fare well in years to come. It's mind wipe if they take us. You worry about your criminals. Consider yourself and Eileen. That's Union solution. Puppets in the offices, lab-born populations to fill up the world. They'll plow up down below and build. Heaven help the downers. I'd cooperate with them, so would you, to keep Pell safe from the worst excesses, but they won't have things that easy way, and I don't want to see you in their hands. We're targets. I've lived all my life in that condition. Surely it's not asking too much that I do one selfish thing, that I save my sons.
What did Emilio say?
Emilio and I are still discussing it.
He told you no. Well, so do I.
Your mother will have a word with you.
Are you sending her? Angelo frowned.
You know that's not possible.
So, I know that. And I'm not going, and I don't think Emilio will choose to either. My blessing to him if he does, but I'm not.
Then you don't know anything, Angelo said shortly. We'll talk about it later.
We won't, Damon said. If we pulled out, panic would set in here. You know that. You know how it would look. Besides that, I won't do it in the first place. It was true. He knew that it was. No, Damon said again, and laid his hand atop his father's, rose, and left. Angelo sat, looking toward the wall, toward the portraits which stood on the shelf, a succession of tri-D figures. Alicia before her accident, young Alicia and himself, a succession of Damons and Emilios from infancy to manhood, to wives and hopes of grandchildren. He looked at all the figures assembled there, at all the gathered ages of them, and reckoned that the good days hereafter would be fewer. After a fashion he was angry with his boys, and after another, proud. He had brought them up what they were.
Emilio,
He wrote to the succession of images, and the sun on Downbelow.
your brother sends his love. Send me what skilled downers you can spare. I'm sending you 1,000 volunteers from the station. Go ahead with the new base if they have to backpack equipment in. Appeal to the downers for help. Trade for native foodstuffs. All love.
And to security.
Process out the assuredly nonviolent. We're going to shift them to Downbelow as volunteers.
He reckoned, even as he did it, where that led. The worst would stay on station, next to the heart and brain of Pell. Transfer the outlaws down and keep the heel on them, some kept urging it. But fragile agreements with the natives, fragile self-respect for the techs who had been persuaded to go down there in the mud and the primitive conditions, it could not be turned into a penal colony. It was life. It was the body of Pell, and he refused to violate it, to ruin all the dreams they had had for its future. There were dark hours when he thought of arranging an accident in which all of Q might decompress. It was an unspeakable idea, a madman's solution, to kill thousands of innocent along with the undesirables, to take in these shiploads one after another, and have accident after accident, keeping Pell free of the burden, keeping Pell what it was. Damon lost sleep over 5 men. He had begun to meditate on utter horror. For that reason, too, he wanted his sons gone from Pell. He thought sometimes that he might actually be capable of applying the measures some urged, that it was weakness that prevented him, that he was endangering what was good and whole to save a polluted rabble, out of which reports of rape and murder came daily. Then he considered where it led, and what kind of life they all faced when they had made a police state of Pell, and recoiled from it with all the convictions Pell had ever had. "Sir," a voice cut in, with the sharper tone of transmissions from Central. "Sir, we have inbound traffic."
Give it here,
he said, and swallowed heavily as the schematic reached his screen. 9 of them.
Who are they?
The carrier Atlantic. the voice of Central returned. Sir, they have 8 freighters in convoy. They ask to dock. They advise of dangerous conditions aboard. Denied, Angelo said. Not till we get an understanding. They could not take so many. Could not. Not another lot like Mallory's. His heart sped, hurting him. Get me Kreshov on Atlantic. Get me contact. Contact was refused from the other end. The warship would do as it pleased. There was nothing they could do to prevent it. The convoy moved in, silent, ominous with the load it bore, and he reached for the alert of security. Three. Downbelow, Main Base, May 28th, 2352. The rain still came down, the thunder dying. Tam Utsapitan watched the humans come and go, arms locked about her knees, her bare feet sunk in mire, the water trickling slowly off her fur. Much that humans did made no sense. Much that humans made was of no visible use. Perhaps for the gods, perhaps that they were mad. But graves, this sad thing the Hisa understood. Tears shed behind masks, the Hisa understood. She watched, rocking slightly, until the last humans had gone, leaving only the mud and the rain and this place where humans laid their dead. And in due time she gathered herself to her feet and walked to the place of cylinders and graves, her bare toes squelching in the mud. They had put the earth over Bennett Jacent and the 2 others. The rain made of the place one large lake, but she had watched. She knew nothing of the marks humans made for signs to themselves, but she knew the one. She carried a tall stick with her, which Old One had made. She came naked in the rain, but for beads and the skins which she bore on a string about her shoulder. She stopped above the grave, took the stick in both her hands, and drove it hard into the soft mud. The spirit face she slanted so it looked up as much as possible, and about its projections she hung the beads and the skins, arranging them with care, despite the rain which sheeted down. Steps sounded near her in the puddles, the hiss of human breath. She spun and leapt aside, appalled that a human had surprised her ears, and stared into a breather-masked face.
What are you doing?
The man demanded. She straightened, wiped her muddy hands on her thighs. To be naked thus embarrassed her, for it upset humans. She had no answer for a human. He looked at the spirit stick, at the grave offerings, at her. What she could see of his face seemed less angry than his voice had promised.
Bennett?
The man asked of her. She bobbed a yes, distressed still. Tears filled her eyes to hear the name, but the rain washed them away. Anger. That too she felt, that Bennett should die and not others.
I'm Emilio Constantin.
He said, and she stood straight at once, relaxed out of her wow. It's not even a hard sentence. My brain just was like, nah, abandon ship, dude. You don't want to be here. What's going on?
I'm Emilio Constantin.
He said, and she stood straight at once, relaxed out of her fight-flight tenseness.
Thank you for Bennett Jacent. He would thank you.
Constantine, man. She amended all her manner and touched him, this very tall one of a tall kind. Love Bennett, man. All love Bennett, man. Good man. Say he friend. All downers are sad. He put a hand on her shoulder, this tall Constantine man, and she turned and put her arm about him and her head against his chest, hugged him solemnly about the wet, awful-feeling yellow clothes. Good Bennett make Lucas mad. Good friend for downers. Too bad he gone. Too bad, Constantine man.
I've heard,
He said.
I've heard how it was here.
Constantine man, good friend. She lifted her face at his touch, looked fearlessly into the strange mask which made him very horrible to see.
Love, good mans. Downers work hard, hard for Constantine. Give you gifts. Go no more away.
She meant it. They had learned how Lucases were. It was said in all the camp that they should do good for the Constantines, who had always been the best humans, gift-bringers more than the Hisa could give.
What's your name?
He asked, stroking her cheek.
What do we call you?
She grinned suddenly, warm in his kindness, stroked her own sleek hide, which was her vanity, wet as it was now.
Humans call me Satin.
She said, and laughed, for her true name was her own, a Hisa thing, but Bennett had given her this for her vanity, this and a bright bit of red cloth, which she had worn to rags and still treasured among her spirit gifts.
Will you walk back with me?
He asked, meaning to the human camp.
I'd like to talk with you.
She was tempted, for this meant favor. And then she sadly thought of duty and pulled away, folded her arms, dejected at the loss of love.
I sit,
She said.
With Bennett.
Make his spirit look at the sky.
She said, showing the spirit stick, explaining a thing the Hisa did not explain.
Look at he home.
Come tomorrow, he said. I need to talk to the Hisa.
She tilted back her head, looked at him in startlement. Few humans called them what they were. It was strange to hear it.
Bring others?
All the high ones, if they will come. We need Hisa up above. Good hands, good work. We need trade down below. Place for more men.
She extended her hand toward the hills and the open plain, which went on forever.
There is place.
But the high ones would have to say.
She laughed.
Say spirit things. I Satin, give this to Constantine, man. All ours. I give, you take. All trade much good things. All happy.
Come tomorrow.
He said, and walked away, a tall, strange figure in the slanting rain. Satin Tam Utsa Pitan sat down on her heels with the rain beating upon her bowed back and pouring over her body, and regarded the grave, with the rain making pocked puddles above it. She waited. Eventually others came, less accustomed to men. Dalut Hosme was one such, who did not share her optimism of them, but even he had loved Bennett. There were men and men. This much the Hisa had learned. She leaned against Dalut Hosme, sun shining through clouds, in the dark evening of their long watch, and by this gesture pleased him. He had begun laying gifts before her mat in this winter season, hoping for spring.
They want Hisa up above, she said. I want to see thee up above. I want this.
She had always wanted it, from the time that she had heard Bennett talk of it. From this place came Constantine's, and Lucas's, but she dismissed that thought. She reckoned it as bright and full of gifts and good things as all the ships which came down from it, bringing them goods and good ideas. Bennett had told them of a great metal place holding out arms to the sun, to drink his power, where ships vaster than they had ever imagined came and went like giants. All things flowed to this place and from it, and Bennett had gone away now, making a time in her life under the sun. It was a manner of pilgrimage, this journey she desired to mark this time, like going to the images of the plain, like the sleep night in the shadow of the images. They had given humans images for the up above, too, to watch there. It was fit to call it pilgrimage. And the time regarded Bennett, who came from that journey.
Why do you tell me?
Dalut Hosme asked.
My spring will be there, on up above.
He nestled closer. She could feel his heat. His arm went about her.
I will go,
he said. It was cruel, but the desire was on her for her first traveling, and this was on him, for her, would grow. And his was on him, for her, would grow, as gray winter passed, and they began to think toward spring, toward warm winds and the breaking of the clouds. And Bennett, cold in the ground, would have laughed his strange human laughter and bidden them happy. So always the Hisa wandered, of springs and the nesting. 4. Pell, Sector Blue 5, May 28th, 2352. It was frozen dinner again. Neither of them had gotten in till late, numb with the stresses of the day. More refugees, more chaos. Damon ate, looked up, finally realizing his self-absorbed silence, found Aline sunk in one of her own, a habit, lately, between them. He was disturbed to think of that, and reached across the table to lay his hand on hers, which rested beside her plate. Her hand turned, curled up to weave with his. She looked as tired as he. She had been working 2 long hours, more than today. It was a remedy of sorts, not to think. She never spoke of Estelle. She did not speak much at all. Perhaps, she thought, she was so much at work. Perhaps he thought, she was so much at work there was little to say. I saw Tally today, he said hoarsely, seeking to fill the silence, to distract her, however grim the topic. He seemed quiet. No pain. No pain at all. Her hand tightened. Then you did right by him after all, didn't you? I don't know. I don't think there is a way to know. He asked. He asked, he echoed. You did all you could to be right. That's all you can do. I love you. She smiled. Her lips trembled until they could no longer hold the smile. Helene? She drew back her hand. Do you think we're going to hold Pell? Are you afraid not? I'm afraid you don't believe it. What kind of reasoning is that? Things you won't discuss with me. Don't give me riddles. I'm not good at them. I never was. I want a child. I'm not on the treatment now. I think you still are. Heat rose to his face. For half a heartbeat he thought of lying. I am. I didn't think it was time to discuss it. Not yet. She pressed her lips tightly together, diswrought. I don't know what you want, he said. I don't know. If Helene Quen wants a baby, all right. I ask. It's all right. Anything is. But I'd hoped it would be for reasons I'd know. I don't know what you're talking about. I've done a lot of thinking. I've watched you. But you haven't done any of it aloud. What do you want? What do I do? Get you pregnant and let you go? I'd help you if I knew how. What do I say? I don't want to fight. I don't want a fight. I told you what I want. Why? She shrugged. I don't want to wait any more. Her brow furrowed. For the first time in days he had the feeling of contact with her eyes, of Eileen as she was, of something gentle. You care, she said. I see that. Sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I know I don't hear you. Sometimes I know I don't hear all you say. On ship, it's my business, having a child or not. Ship family is closer in some things and further apart in others. But you with your own family, I understand that. I respect it. Your home, too. It's yours. She managed the faintest of smiles, an offering, perhaps. So what do you say to it? Offices of station planning were given out dire warnings, advice otherwise, pleadings otherwise. It was not only the establishment of Q. There was the war getting nearer. All rules applied to Constantines first. He simply nodded. So we're through waiting. It was like a shadow lifting. Estelle's ghost fled the place, the small apartment they had drawn in Blue 5, which was smaller, into which their furnishings did not fit, where everything was out of order. It was all at once home, the hall. It was all at once home, the hall with the dishes stowed in the clothing lockers, and the living room which was bedroom by night, with boxes lashed in the corner, downer wickerwork, with what should have gone into all the hall with what should have gone into the hall lockers. which are filled with dishes. Got it. I'm going to reread that paragraph because I just tripped all over it. I apologize. It was like a shadow lifting. Estelle's ghost fled the place, the small apartment they had drawn in Blue 5, which was smaller, into which their furnishings did not fit, where everything was out of order. It was all at once home, the hall with the dishes stowed in the clothing lockers, and the living room which was bedroom by night, with boxes lashed in the corner, downer wickerwork, with what should have gone into all the hall lockers. They lay in the bed that was the daytime couch. And she talked, lying in his arms, for the first time in weeks talked, late into the night, a flow of memories she had never shared with him in all their being together. He tried to reckon what she had lost in Estelle. Her ship, she still called it that. Brotherhood, kinship. Merchanter morals, the stationer proverb ran, but he could not see Aline among the others, like them, rowdy merchanters off ship for a dockside binge and a sleep-over with anyone willing. Could never believe that. Believe it, she said, her breath stirring against his shoulder. That's the way we live. What do you want instead? Inbreeding? They were my cousins on that ship. You were different, he insisted. He remembered her as he had first seen her, in his office on a matter involving a cousin's troubles, always quieter than the others. A conversation, a re-meeting, a second voyage, and Pell again. She had never gone bar hunting with her cousins, had not made the merchanter hangouts, had come to him, had spent those days on station with him. Failed to board again. Merchanters rarely married. Eileen had. No, she said, you were different. You'd take anyone's baby? The thought troubled him. Some things he had never asked Eileen because he thought he knew, and Eileen had never talked that way. He began, belatedly, to revise all he thought he knew, to be hurt and to fight that. She was Eileen. That quantity he still believed in, trusted. Where else could we get them? She asked, making strange, clear sense. We love them, do you think not? They belong to the whole ship. Only now there isn't any. She could talk of that suddenly. He felt the tension ebb, a sigh against him. They're all gone. You called Eltquen your father, Tia James your mother. Was it that way? He was. She knew. And a moment later, she left a station to go with him. Not many will. She had never asked him to. That thought had never clearly occurred to him. Ask a Constantin to leave Pell. He asked himself if he would have, and felt a deep unease. I would have, he insisted. I might have. It would be hard, he admitted aloud. It was hard for you. She nodded, a movement against his arm. Are you sorry, Eileen? A small shake of her head. It's late to talk about things like this, he said. I wish we had. I wish we'd known enough to talk to each other. So many things we didn't know. It bother you? He hugged her against him, kissed her through a veil of hair, brushed it aside. He thought for a moment of saying no, decided then to say nothing. You've seen Pell. You realize I've never set foot on a ship bigger than a shuttle? Never been out from this station? Some things I don't know how to look at, or even how to imagine the question. You understand me? Some things I don't know how to ask you, either. What would you ask for? I just did. I don't know how to say yes or no. Eileen, I don't know if I could have left Pell. I love you, but I don't know that I could have done that, after so short a time. And that bothers me. That bothers me if it's something in me that it never occurred to me. That I spent all my planning trying to think how to make you happy on Pell. Easier for me to stay a time than for a Constantine to uproot himself from Pell. Pausing's easy. We do it all the time. Only losing Estelle I never planned. Like what's out there, you never planned. You've answered me. How did I answer you? By what it is that bothers you. That puzzled him. We do it all the time. That frightened him. But she talked more, lying against him, about more than things. Deep feelings, the way childhood was for a merchanter. The first time she had set foot on a station, aged 12 and frightened by rude stationers who assumed any merchanter was fair game. How a cousin had died on Mariner years back, knifed in a stationer quarrel, not even comprehending a stationer's jealousy that had killed him. And an incredible thing, that in the loss of her ship, Eline's pride had suffered. Pride! The idea set him back, so that for some time he lay staring at the dark ceiling, thinking about it. The name was diminished, a possession like the ship. Someone had diminished it, and too anonymously to give her an enemy to get it back from. For a moment he thought of Mallory, the hard arrogance of an elite breed, the aristocracy of privilege. Sealed worlds and a law unto itself, where no one had property, and everyone had it, the ship and all who belonged to it. Merchanters who would spit in a dockmaster's eye made grumbling retreat when a Mallory or a Quen ordered it. She felt grief at losing Estelle. That had to be. But shame, too, that she had not been there when it mattered. That Pell had set her in the dockside offices where she could use that reputation the Quens had. But now there was nothing at her back, nothing but the reputation she had not been there to pay for. A dead name. A dead ship. Maybe she detected pity from other merchanters. That would be the bitterest of all. One thing she had asked of him. He had cheated her of it without discussing it, without seeing. "The first child," he murmured, turning his head on the pillow to look at her, "goes by Quen. You hear me, Aline? Pell has Constantins enough. My father may sulk, but he'll understand. My mother will. I think it's important it be that way." She began to cry as she had never cried in his presence, not without resisting it. She put her arms about him and stayed there till morning. And that is where we will call it for this week's installment of Downbelow Station. Sorry about technical issues and fumbling through the text. CJ Cherryh is a unique author. I do not rag her. I do not razz her for her baffling construction because I find that her particular style of prose actually flows pretty well through the head, through the mind, in ways that, say, Jeff Vandermeer's more recent prose iterations doesn't really. Oh, geez, Louise. Okay. So, actually, what time is... it's later than I thought. Ugh. So, I lied. We're actually going to do one more chapter. Because that gets us to book 2. My apologies.
Yeah, I'm a filthy liar. I took your trust and I dashed it to pieces. What are you gonna do now?
And so on and so forth. Let me get the other cover art up. If I can remember what it was. Which was the one I had? Ah, yes, that one. That one is this here. So yeah, we're gonna do one more chapter, because otherwise it's either go off into the and cut it off midway through next week into the next part, or go extra long now. I will not promise to do long ones like this again, or as frequently. Did I just kill my stream instead of the recording? Oh no! Oh no, there it is. We're good. Excellent. All right, one more chapter. Sorry. Chapter 10, Viking Station, June 5th, 2352. Viking hung in view, a gleam in the light of an angry star. Mining, industry regarding metals and minerals, that was its support. Seagust heirs watched, from the vantage of the freighter's bridge, the image on the screens. And something was wrong. The bridge whispered with alarm, passed from station to station, frowns on faces and troubled looks. Ayres glanced at his three companions. They had caught it too, stood uneasily, all of them trying to keep out of the way of procedures that had officers darting from this station to that to supervise. Another ship was coming in with them. Ayres knew enough to interpret that. It moved up until it was visual on the screens, and ships were not supposed to ride that close, not at this distance from station. It was big, many-vaned. "It's in our lane," Delegate Marsh said. The ship moved closer, still to them, and the merchanter captain rose from his place, walked across to them. "We have trouble," he said. "We're being escorted in. I don't recognize the ship that's riding us. It's military. Frankly, I don't think we're in company space anymore." Oh, sorry, that's another guy entirely. "We have trouble," he said. "We're being escorted in. I don't recognize the ship that's riding us. It's military. Frankly, I don't think we're in company space anymore." "Are you going to break and run?" Ayres asked. "No, you may order it, but we're not about to do it. You don't understand the way of things. It's wide space. Sometimes ships get surprises. Some things happened here. We've wandered into it. I'm sending a steady no fire. We'll go in peaceably, and if we're lucky, they'll let us go again." "You think Union is here?" "There's only them and us, sir." "And our situation?" "Very uncomfortable, sir, but those are the chances you took. I won't give odds that you people won't be. Oh my God, I have the wrong person entirely. Ayres is the guy from Earth. Oh, Jesus. I might have to write out that list of dramatis personae just to remind myself who's who.
Ah, he's snooty, you see. He's from Earth.
He's not going to sound like that.
Are you going to break and run?
Ayres asked.
"No, you may order it, but we're not about to do it. You don't understand the way of things. It's wide space. Sometimes ships get surprises. Some things happened here. We've wandered into it. I'm sending a steady no fire. We'll go in peaceably, and if we're lucky, they'll let us go again."
"You think Union is here?"
"There's only them and us, sir."
"And our situation?"
"Very uncomfortable, sir. But those are the chances you took. I won't give odds you people won't be detained. No, sir. Sorry."
Marsh started to protest. Ayres put out a hand. "No, I'd suggest we go and have a drink in the main room and simply wait it out. We'll talk about it." Guns made Ayres nervous. Marched by rifle-carrying juveniles across a dock much the same as Pell's, crowded into a lift with them, these two same young revolutionaries, he felt a certain shortness of breath and worried for his companions, who were still under guard near the ship's berth. All the soldiers he had seen in crossing the Viking dock were of the same stamp, green coveralls for a uniform, a sea of green on that dockside, overwhelming the few civilians visible. Guns everywhere, and emptiness along the upward curve of the docks beyond, deserted distances. There were not enough people. Far from the number of residents who had been at Pell, in spite of the fact that there were freighters docked all about Viking Station. Trapped, he surmised. Merchanters, perhaps dealt with courteously enough. The soldiers who had boarded their own ship had been coldly courteous. But it was a good bet that ship was not going to be leaving. Not the ship that had brought them in, not any of the others out there. The lift stopped on some upper level. "Out," the young captain said, and ordered him left down the hall with a wave of the rifle barrel. The officer was no more than 18 at most. Crop-headed, male and female, they all looked the same age. They spilled out before and after him, more guards than a man of his age and physical condition warranted. The corridor leading to windowed offices ahead of them was lined with more such, rifles still fixed at a precise attitude. All 18 or thereabouts, with close-clipped hair all attractive. That was what urged his attention. There was an uncommon, fresh-faced pleasantness about them, as if beauty were dead, as if there were no more distinction of the plain and the lovely. In that company, a scar, a disfigurement of any kind, would have stood out as bizarre. There was no place for the ordinary among them. Male and female, the proportions were all within a certain tolerance, all similar, though they varied in color and features. Like mannequins. He remembered Norway's scarred troops and Norway's gray-haired captain, the disrepute of their equipment, the manner of them, who seemed to know no discipline. Dirt, scars, age. There was no such taint on these, no such imprecision. He shuddered inwardly, felt cold gathered at his belly as he walked in among the mannequins, into offices, and further, into another chamber and before a table where sat older men and women. He was relieved to see gray hair and blemishes and overweight, deliriously relieved.
Mr. Ayres,
A mannequin announced him, rifle in hand. Company delegate. The mannequin advanced to lay his confiscated credentials on the deck in front of the central figure, a heavy-bodied woman, gray-haired. She leafed through them, lifted her head with a slight frown.
Mr. Ayres, Inez Andelin, she said. A sorry surprise for you, isn't it? But such things happen. You'll now give us a company reprimand for seizing your ship. Feel free to do so.
No, Citizen Andelin. It was, in fact, a surprise, but hardly devastating. I came to see what I might see, and I have seen plenty.
And what have you seen, Citizen Ayres?
Citizen Andelin. He walked forward a few paces, as far as the anxious faces and sudden movement of rifles would allow. I'm second secretary to the Security Council on Earth. My companions are of the Earth Company's highest levels. Our inspection of the situation has shown us disorder and a militarism in the company fleet which has passed all limit of company responsibility. We are dismayed at what we find. We disown Mazian. We do not wish to hold any territories in which the citizens have determined they wish to be otherwise governed. We are anxious to be quit of a burdensome conflict and of an unprofitable venture. You know well enough that you possess this territory. The line is stretched too thin. We can't possibly enforce what residents of the beyond don't want, and in fact, why should we be interested to do so? We don't regard this meeting at this station as a disaster. We were, in fact, looking for you. There was a settling in the council, a perplexity on their faces. We are prepared, Ayres said in a loud voice, to cede formally all the disputed territories. We frankly have no further interest beyond present limits. The star-faring arm of the company is dissolved by vote of the company directorates. The sole interest we have now is to see to our orderly disengagement, our withdrawal, and the establishment of a firm border which will give us both reasonable latitude. Heads bent. The council murmured together, one way and the other. Even the mannequins about the edges of the chamber seemed disturbed.
We are a local authority, said Andelin at last. You'll have the opportunity to carry your orders higher. Can you leash the Can you leash the Maziani and guarantee our security?
Ayres drew in his breath. Mazian's fleet? No, if his captains are an example.
You're in from Pell.
Yes.
And claim experience with Mazian's captains, do you?
He blanked for the instant, was not accustomed to such slips. Neither was he accustomed to distances over which such comings and goings would be news. But the merchanters, he reasoned at once, would know and tell as much as he could. Withholding information was more than pointless. It was dangerous. I met, he confessed, with Norway's captain, one Mallory. Andelin's head inclined solemnly.
Signy Mallory, a unique privilege.
None to me. The company refuses responsibility for Norway.
Disorder, mismanagement, denial of responsibility, and yet Pell is well reputed for order. I am amazed at your report. What happened there?
I do not serve as your intelligence.
You do, however, disown Mazian and the fleet. This is a radical step.
I don't disown the safety of Pell. That's our territory. Then you are not prepared to cede all the disputed territories. Sorry, let's repeat that. Then you are not prepared to cede all the disputed territories. By disputed territories, of course, we mean those starting with Fargone. Ah, and what is your price, citizen heirs? An orderly transition of power, certain agreements assuring the safeguarding of our interests. Adeline's face relaxed in laughter. You seek a treaty with us. You throw aside your own forces and seek a treaty with us. A reasonable solution to a mutual difficulty. 10 years since the last reliable report out of the beyond, many more years than that with a fleet out of our control, refusing our direction, in a war which consumes what could be a mutually profitable trade. That is what brings us here. There was deathly silence in the room. At last Andeline nodded, her chins doubling. Mr. Ayres, we shall wrap you in cotton wool and hand you on most gently, most gently, to Cytine, with great hope that at last someone on earth has come to his senses. A last question, rephrased. Was Mallory alone at Pell? I retain that option in negotiations. Andeline pursed her lips. You need not worry about giving us critical information. The merchanters will deny us nothing. Were it possible for you to restrain the Maziani from their immediate manoeuvres, I would suggest you try. I'd suggest that to demonstrate the I'd suggest that to I'd suggest that to demonstrate the seriousness of your proposal, you at least make a token gesture toward that restraint during negotiations. We cannot control Mazian. You know that you will lose, said Andeline. In fact, that you have already lost, and you're attempting to hand us what we have already won, and get concessions for it. There's little interest for us in pursuing hostilities, win or lose. It seems to us that our original object. It seems to us that our original. I think there's an extra comma in here that's throwing my brain off. It seems to us that our original object was to make sure the stars were a viable commercial venture, and you patently are viable. You have an economy worth trading with, in a different kind of economic relationship from what we had before, saving us the entanglements with the beyond we don't want. We can agree on a route, a meeting point where your ships and ours can come and go as a matter of common right. What you do on your side doesn't interest us. Direct the development of the beyond as you like. Likewise, we will be withdrawing some jump freighters home for the commencement of that trade. If we can possibly secure some restraint on Conrad Mazian, we'll recall those ships as well. I'm being very blunt with you. The interests we pursue are so far from each other there's no sane reason to continue hostilities. You're being recognized in all points as the legitimate government of the outer colonies. I am the negotiator and the interim ambassador if the negotiations are successful. We don't consider it defeat if the will of the majority of the colonies has supported you. The fact that you are the government in these regions is persuasive of that fact. We extend you formal recognition from the new administration which has taken charge in our own affairs, a situation I will explain further to your central authorities. And we are prepared to open trade negotiations at the same time. All military operations within our power to control will be stopped. Unfortunately, it isn't within our power to stop them, only to withdraw support and approval. I am a regional administrator, a step removed from our central directorate, but I don't think, Ambassador Ayres, that the directorate will have any hesitancy in opening discussion on these matters. At least, as a regional administrator sees things, this is the case. I extend you a cordial welcome. Haste will save lives. Haste indeed. These troops will conduct you to a safe lodging. Your companions will join you. Arrest? Absolutely the contrary. The station is newly taken and insecure as yet. We want to be sure no hazard confronts you. cotton wool, Mr. Ambassador. Walk where you will, but with a security escort at all times. And by my earnest advice, rest. You'll be shipping out as soon as a vessel can be cleared. It's even uncertain whether you'll have a night's sleep before that departure. You agree, sir? Agreed, he said, and Andalin called the young officer over and spoke to him. The officer gestured, with his hand this time. He took his leave with nods of courtesy from all the table, walked out, with a cold feeling at his back. Practicalities, he reckoned. He did not like the look of what he saw, the two alike guards, the coldness everywhere. Security Council on Earth had not seen such things when it gave its orders and laid its plans. The lack of indeterminate earthward stations intermediate, my God. The lack of intermediate earthward stations since the dismantling of the Hinder Star bases made the spread of the war logistically unlikely, but Mazian had failed to prevent it from spreading all across the beyond, had aggravated the situation, escalated hostilities to dangerous levels. The sudden prospect of having Mazian's forces reactivate those Hinder Star stations in a retrenching action behind Pell turned him sick with the mere contemplation of the possibilities. The isolationists had had their way too long. Now there were bitter decisions to be taken. Reapproachment to this thing called union, agreements, borders, barriers, containment. If the line were not held, disaster loomed. The possibility of having Union itself activating those abandoned earthward stations, convenient bases. There was a fleet building at Saul Station. It had to have time. Mazian was fodder for Union guns until then. Saul itself had to be in command of the next resistance. Saul, and not the headless thing the company fleet had become, refusing company orders, doing as they would. Most of all, they had to keep Pell, had to keep that one base. Ayres walked where he was led, settled into the apartment they gave him several levels down, which was excellent in comforts, and the comfort reassured him. He forced himself to sit and appear relaxed to await his companions, that they assured him would come. And they did come, finally, in a group and unnerved by their situation. Ayres thrust their escort out, closed the door, made a shifting of his eyes toward the peripheries of the compartment, silent warning against free speech. The others, Ted Marsh, Carl Bella, Ramona Diaz, understood and said nothing, as he hoped they had not spoken their minds elsewhere. Someone on Viking Station, a freighter crew, was in great difficulty, he had no doubt. Supposedly merchanters were able to pass the battle lines with no worse than occasional shepherding to different ports than they had planned. Or sometimes, if it was one of Mazian's ships that stopped them, confiscation of part of the cargo or a man or woman of the crew. The merchanters lived with it. And the merchanters who had brought them to Viking would survive detention until they had seen at Pell and the merchanters who had brought them to Viking would survive detention until what they had seen at Pell and here ceased to be of military value. He hoped for their sakes that this was the case. He could do nothing for them. He did not sleep well that night, and before morning of Main Day, as Andalin had warned him, they were roused out of bed to take ship further into Union territory. They were promised their destination was Cytene, the center of the rebel command. It was begun. There was no retreat. Sorry, I lied to you all again. I lied. I don't know if I can forgive myself. There's another chapter. Chapter 11. Pell. Detention. Red Sector. June 27th, 2352. He was back. Josh Talley looked at the window of his room and met the face which was so often there, remembered, after the vague fashion in which he remembered anything recent, that he had known this man, and that this man was part of all that had happened to him. He met the eyes this time, and, feeling more of definite curiosity than he was wont, moved from his cot, walking with difficulty for the general weakness of his limbs. advanced to the window, and confronted the young man at closer range. He put out his hand to the window, wishing for others kept far from him. And he lived entirely in white limbo, where all things were suspended, where touch was not keen and tastes all bland, where words came at distance. He drifted in this whiteness, detached and isolated. Come out, his doctors had told him. Come out whenever you feel inclined. The world is out here. You can come when you're ready. It was a womb-like safety. He grew stronger in it. Once he had lain on his cot, disinclined even to move, leaden-limbed and weary. He was much, much stronger. He could feel moved to rise and investigate this stranger. He grew brave again. For the first time he knew that he was getting well, and that made him braver still. The man behind the pane moved, reached out his hand, matched it to his on the window, and his numbed nerves tingled with excitement, expecting touch, expecting the numb sensation of another's hand. The universe existed beyond a sheet of plastic, all there to touch, unfelt, insulated, cut off. He was hypnotized by this revelation. He stared into dark eyes and a lean young face, a man in a brown suit, and wondered was it he, himself, as he was outside the womb, that hands matched so perfectly, touching and not touched? But he wore white, and it was no mirror. Nor was it his face. He dimly remembered his own face, but it was a boy his memory saw, an old picture of himself. He could not remember the man. He could not recover the man. It was not a boy's hand that he reached out, not a boy's hand that reached back to him, independent of his willing it. A great deal had happened to him, and he could not put it all together. Did not want to. Sorry. He remembered fear. The face behind the window smiled at him, a faint, kindly smile. He gave it back, reached with his other hand to touch the face as well, barriered by cold plastic. "Come out," a voice said from the wall. He remembered that he could. He hesitated, but the stranger kept inviting him. He saw the lips move with the sound which came from elsewhere. And cautiously he moved to the door which was always, they said, open when he wanted it. It did open to him. Of a sudden he must face the universe without safety. He saw the man standing there, staring back at him. And if he touched, it would be cold plastic. And if the man should frown, there was no hiding. "Josh Talley," the young man said. "I'm Damon Constantin. Do you remember me at all?" Constantin. The name was a powerful one. It meant Pell and power. What else it had meant would not come to him, save that once they had been enemies, and were no longer. It was all wiped clean, all forgiven. Josh Talley. The man knew him. He felt personally obligated to remember this Damon, and could not. It embarrassed him. "How are you feeling?" Damon asked. That was complicated. He tried to summarize and could not. It required associating his thoughts, and his strayed in all directions at once. "Do you want anything?" Damon asked. "Pudding," he said, "with fruit." That was his favorite. He had it every meal but breakfast. They gave him what he asked for. "What about books? Would you like some books?" He had not been offered that. "Yes," he said, brightening with the memory that he had loved books. "Thank you." "Do you remember me?" Damon asked. Josh shook his head. "I'm sorry," he said miserably. "We've probably met, but you see, I don't remember things clearly. I think we must have met after I came here." "It's natural you'd forget. They tell me you're doing very well. I've been here several times to see about you." "I remember." "Do you? When you get well, I want you to come to my apartment for a visit sometime. My wife and I would like that." He considered it, and the universe widened, doubling, multiplying itself so that he was not sure of his footing. "Do I know her, too?" "No, but she knows about you. I've talked to her about you. She says she wants you to come." What's her name? Eileen. Eileen Quen. He repeated it with his lips, not to let it leave him. It was a merchanter name. He had not thought of ships. Now he did. Remembered dark and stars. He stared fixedly at Damon's face, not to lose contact with it, this point of reality in a shifting white world. He might blink and be alone again. He might wake in his room, in his bed, and not have any of this to hold on to. He clenched his mind about it with all his strength. "You'll come again," he said, "even if I forget. Please come and remind me." "You'll remember," Damon said, "but I'll come if you don't." Josh wept, which he did easily and often, the tears sliding down his face, a mere outwelling of emotion, not of grief or joy, only profound relief, a cleansing. "Are you all right?" "Are you all right?" Damon asked. "I'm tired," he said, for his legs were weak from standing, and he knew he should go back to his bed before he became dizzy. "Will you come in?" "I have to stay in this area," Damon said. "I'll send you the books, though." He had forgotten the books already. He nodded, pleased and embarrassed at once. "Go back," Damon said, releasing him. Josh turned and walked back inside. The door closed. He went to his bed, dizzier than he had thought. He must walk more. Enough of lying still. If he walked, he would get well faster. Damon. Eileen. Damon. Eileen. There was a place outside which became real to him, to which for the first time he wanted to go, a place to reach for when he turned loose of this. He looked to the window. It was empty. For a terrible, lonely moment he thought that he had imagined it all, that it was part of the dream world which shaped itself in this whiteness, and that he had created it. But it had given him names. It had detail and substance independent of himself. It was real, or he was going mad. The books came, 4 cassettes to use in the player, and he held them close to his chest and rocked to and fro, smiling to himself and laughing, cross-legged on his bed, for it was true. He had touched the real outside, and it had touched him. He looked about him, and it was only a room, with walls he no longer needed. And that is where we will actually leave you this week. this Wednesday. Anyway, sorry about that. I didn't realize how close it was to book 2. I thought it was closer to the middle. Anyway, let's get some pages bracketed here. Yeah, it should do it. Wow, chapter 2 of book 2 is lengthy. Let's get that plopped in there. There we go. Anyway, yeah. Hopefully people enjoyed, despite the technical issues and me stumbling over CJ Cherryh's occasionally difficult to read aloud prose. I do urge anyone, as ever, to please feel free to find a copy of the book to read it yourself. I promise you that it reads it reads in text form more easily and more comprehensibly than I do it aloud. I don't say that to neg neg on myself or anything. It's just it's a very difficult book. Like, I find myself while reading it like doubling back to like earlier parts of a line or a paragraph because I'm like, oh wait a minute, how did we get here? Um, it's fairly tricky reading. But I mean that as a compliment because it is intelligible. It conveys a wealth of emotional context that other also complicated to read books simply tend not to. CJ Cherryh is truly a gift. Anyway, I will leave it there. I'll do a little fiddling on my own to see if I can figure out why my audio sounds tinny. It could just be that my throat's messed up, and I might I have some cleaning up to do anyway. There are a multitude of reasons why it could be. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Worst comes to worst, you'll just have to hang on until I can get a replacement microphone of some kind. Anyway, until next time, stay safe, stay sane, be decent to each other. It's what Damon Constantine is trying to do. Constantin is trying to do. I'm going to like do different name pronunciations by accident. I just want to apologize for that. There are surely canonical ways these names are pronounced, and I am surely going to not be getting them right, but that's okay. Probably. Unless CJ Cherryh shows up and is like, no, 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 buddy, pal, friend. You can't be doing this. In which case, obviously, I'll go with Word of God. Anyway, until next time,